Now, here's Art.
Welcome to Extraterrestrial Radio, everybody. I am Art Bell. It's a pleasure to be here on Sirius XM particularly. Well, I'll tell you what. These folks have done exactly what they have said they would do all the way down the line. The stereo is now summed up. So those of you who were astute enough to send me emails about the stereo situation, congratulations. You got it dead right. That's why you have to pay attention to emails that come from all of you. Speaking of that, if you want to send me one, I'm artbell@artbell.com. I want to lead tonight with sad news. I'm sure you know by now Tom Clancy has passed away at just 66 years of age. 2 years younger than I am. Read every one of his books. He's an American icon. He'll certainly be very much missed. Red October, Hunt for Red October, was just awesome. So, take care, Tom. See you on the other side. Working on the 90-minute timeout. Yes, I know that annoys many people. Well, you've got to remember, it really is important to remember, that Sirius XM sort of began more as a music service than it did as anything else. And then it began to add a little bit of talk radio, and this is really, I think, its first foray. Well, there's Howard. But I mean, really, in a long-form talk radio, and particularly, certainly, paranormal talk radio, this is their first foray into it. So, learn as you go. Okay, I want to remind you about ghost stories. If you have a very good ghost story, just encapsulate it, very short story, with your phone number, and perhaps on Spooky Matter. That would be Halloween. Spooky Matter. Good name. Thank you, Bellgab. That's a site where they talk about this program. Bellgab. Bellgab. You might want to take a look. As I said last night, they're pretty cruel in terms of being critics, but vaguely lovable. Now, there's another meteor. I'm beginning to think that somebody out there is throwing rocks at us. This one went screaming over Alberta, but this time, it was captured on video. So you might want to take a look. It's the age of the meteor. What can I say? They're coming one after another after another. I've been doing reports every single night on meteors. And there's a picture on the website, artbell.com. There's going to be a lot of reasons for you to go to artbell.com tonight. A picture of some weather that the writer thought represented some sort of weather modification. It certainly represents a very, very weird picture of weather. I don't know what you call that, coming in on Montana. I've got to take a second and tell you about the funniest thing that I think I've been a cat owner all my life, as you know. Still have 3. Dolly, Abby, Yeti. And I mentioned Dolly first because she's the one who gets the credit for this story. You know, I sleep like I think anybody else. We've got a king-size bed. My wife and I are together side by side. But this morning at about 6 o'clock, something, and I get to bed late after the program. Something woke me up. Dolly is our little adoptee from the Philippines. We got her in Manila. And she's a little kitty, a little Filipino kitty. And she's always going to be small. But she's a darling. Anyway, this morning at about 6 in the morning, I woke up because I heard a... I can't make... my voice won't go high enough to imitate her voice. Half asleep. So I turned over. And between my wife and myself, there is a little room between the two pillows. You've got to picture this. I don't know how she did it, but she's very human. You know, she opens drawers. She does a lot of things that she probably ought not be doing. But here she is, next to me, in the little space between my pillow and my wife's, with her head up. In other words, she's sleeping on her back. And I swear to God, folks, this is the truth, every word of it. She's got the covers going around her little neck, and her head is facing up, as in sleeping on her back. How she got under there, managed to cover herself up, and then stick her head out so she was imitating us, I don't know. But there she was, and she was there all night long. I guess I woke up at 6, and she was kind of snoring and dreaming. I think it was a dream. You know, cats have dreams, and sometimes they're moving around or making a little noise, and I guess she had a dream. But it was hilarious. If I could have had a picture of it, it would have been the $1 billion picture of the year. So I can only describe it to you, but it was hilarious, absolutely hilarious, to turn over and see a cat on its back, covered up to its neck, and snoring somewhat peacefully. I swear to you it's true. Anyway, all right, now on to the real reason for you to go to artbell.com. We have had so many emails, so many communications from people saying, Art, what about dark matter stuff? You know, T-shirts, coffee cups. Dark matter's a, pretty cool thing to have printed on whatever. And we've been getting those now since the show began. So, okay, we've got them now. We now have a store on the website. It's called Arts Parts. Not a bad name, huh? Arts Parts. And in Arts Parts, you can choose from T-shirts, coffee mugs, hats, that kind of stuff. And it's the only official, that we live in the day and age of piracy. I mean, big piracy. I have no illusions about it. TV shows are pirated, movies are pirated, my program is pirated, everything's pirated. It's just the age we live in. And so, there's people out there pirating my image and the name of the show and selling stuff. Well, let me tell you, it's not the real stuff. Now, how will you know that what you get is the real thing? Well, I have signed it. That's how you'll know. If you see a supposed Arts Parts item, and it doesn't have my signature on it, that means it's bootleg stuff. It also means that if they've copied my signature, they're going to have legal cement shoes shortly. So there you have it. If you want to go to artbell.com, those of you who have been asking about it, we have quite an assortment of cool stuff. Coming up no, wait, I'm not done. Am I? Government still closed. NASA's testing cell phone tracking. Oh, wonderful. NSA, rather, is testing cell phone tracking. Probably with the help of NASA. Here's somebody, a subscriber from the United Kingdom, says, Art, it was a little tricky to become one here in the UK, but I did it. As you said, I need a U.S. address and U.S. credit card. So congratulations and hi over there. Let's see. Oh, yes. This is somebody who writes about Whitley's statement of if you die. I'm going to be asking our guest tonight about this. This goes way back to John Lear days, who quoted, he said, Whitley Strieber, and that is, if you die, the traditional thing is you go to the light, right? There's a bright, shiny light. Your relatives are supposed to be there along with your friends who've passed away, and probably Tom Clancy to say welcome. So you go to the light. But no, I've been told otherwise by some wise people. John Lear and Whitley confirmed it last night. Don't go to the light, they say. Go to the darkness. The light is a trick. Nothing has ever bugged me after I heard it more than that. I still think if I were to pass on right now and I saw the light and I saw the darkness, I'd be going to the light. But according to some knowledgeable people, I would be tricked and I'd walk right into, I suppose, the flames. Whatever was waiting. So, doesn't that bug you to hear that? People saying it's a trick. Don't go to the light, go to the darkness. See, now I've put it on you. You'll always think about it now. Military Magazine highlights Iranian Air Force encounters with UFOs. Combat Aircraft Monthly makes a startling claim. F-14s from the Islamic Republic of the Iran Air Force have been chasing something for 20 years. Now, when I first read this, I thought, sure, drones, ours. But no. The mysterious unidentified craft displayed astonishing flight characteristics, including, for example, the ability to fly outside the atmosphere, attain a maximum cruise speed of Mach 10, and a minimum speed of 0, with the ability to hover over any target they want. Now, if we have drones like that, maybe we do. I mean, who knows? Maybe we do. All right, well, I'm going to halt it all there. Art's Parts up at artbell.com. Take a look. Pick out what you like. Los Angeles Times best-selling author, paranormal researcher, and former engineer-scientist, get this, on the International Space Station, Dr. Albert Taylor, has been involved in numerous top-secret programs, one of which is the F-117A stealth fighter. He was also the design team, on the design team of the former President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, or Star Wars. Boy, we could ask him lots of questions, huh? Taylor is currently an internationally known lecturer, speaker, and paranormal researcher, robot design builder, and programmer. He's an active supporter of the International Association of Near-Death Studies, so we'll ask him about this going to the darkness thing, and the well-respected Monroe Institute. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a very interesting night. What I suggest is that you stay right where you are and prepare yourself for, dare I say it, quite a ride. The fact that there are so many new listeners, after all, when we started here, yes, I know a lot of you came over, and, my regular listeners, I do understand you came over, but bear in mind, SiriusXM has about 27 million subscribers. That's a whole bunch of people. 27 million people. My God. That really is a lot of people. And, they're kind of stumbling into and discovering the show. A lot of people have XM, Sirius in their cars. And, you're on a long trip and you're going, my God, this is a lot of channels. How many are here anyway? A couple hundred, I think 200 or something. That's a lot of channels. So they're slowly stumbling into dark matter. We're here for, a total of 8 hours, I think, every night. That's a lot of time, really a lot of time. Anyway, new listeners. So, Dr. Taylor originally wrote a book called Soul Traveler. Dr. Taylor, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Inviting me back. It's an awesome experience again.
Well, it is awesome. And for a lot of listeners, as I just mentioned, it's going to be a new experience. So we're going to get to robots and paranormal, but you wrote a book called Soul Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was, well, still is, revolutionary, I would say.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And so give us a sense, if you would, as if you were talking to a brand new person who had never seen your book, never heard of soul travel, doesn't have the slightest clue what soul traveling is. Give us the 101, please.
Well, first, let me say this. I just stopped laughing because I'm not that. I was thinking, why doesn't it surprise me that you'd have a cat named Yeti? So I just want to mention that was kind of
22 years old, Albert. 22 years old.
I'm a cat lover too. I almost named my cat Astro, but I thought not. Maybe not. That would maybe be a good idea.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. We have a little pause, so it's important every now and then to pause, or we won't hear each other. That cat you mentioned is 22 years old now.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's a senior citizen. Well, I love cats, so I really do.
Okay. Anyway, so your book, Soul Traveler. If you're going to give somebody an idea, just as you would from the beginning, what would you say? What's soul travel?
Well, first of all, I can say that I never set out to write a book. I was keeping a diary, a journal, basically. As far back as I can remember, the age of 5 is my earliest memories of having some strange things happen to me in my life and being terrified of them all my life. And the superstition that my family used to infuse into that experience didn't help any. And the thing that used to happen to me all the time was that I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would feel paralyzed and I couldn't move, but I could see and I could hear. And then the really scary parts are sometimes there would be something humanoid, transparent, shadowy, moving around my room. So at 5 years old, my grandmother lived with us at that time. So at 5 years old, when I'd finally be able to move my body, which was a horrible experience, I would jump out of my bed and I would go running into her room, and I would say, Grandma, so I couldn't move, and I was paralyzed, and there was someone in my room. And my grandmother would pat me on the back and say, oh, that's all right. What that was a witch was coming to steal your soul because you were bad yesterday. So that was my introduction to what's now known as out-of-body experiences. So with that kind of beginning, I wasn't eager to embrace this at all. As a matter of fact, I was terrified of it, and there is a lot of people over the years, and particularly in my family, that are terrified of this, and they still have this experience. And those people who are out there who do have this experience, if you don't know what it is very frightening. You know,
all right. Here is a first big question for you.
Mm-hmm.
People are probably sitting there going, "Oh, come on, out of body. Can you really, verifiably, leave your body either during sleep or during a session that you cook up with some level of concentration, or however you would do it? Can you really, really, really leave your body? Is it for real, or is it?" Well, I don't know what's the right word. Not real.
Well, is it real, or is it a dream, or is it a figment of my imagination? Is it a neurological defect? Well, this is what I have to say this. I was raised Catholic. I didn't believe in this stuff. I wasn't taught anything about this stuff. The closest thing to anything astral that I knew of was Astro, the dog on the Jetsons. So, being a scientist in aerospace, and being in the military with a secret clearance for almost 3 decades, this didn't even come into my frame of reference or belief in any way, shape, or form. But I couldn't ignore the fact that I'd been having these neurological or paralysis episodes and the voices, and then another thing that I didn't know is that I was having a lot of flying dreams, and I would be flying in my dreams all the time, and not just flying, but in control of my dreams. In other words, having lucid dreams. But I never knew any of that was connected. And then later on, I had the fortune of attending a lecture of a woman who had a near-death experience. And she was the first person, she said to everybody, she says, has anybody ever felt paralyzed? And that was the first time that anybody outside of my family had ever even talked about it. And my hand immediately shot up in the air, and I said, yeah, it happens to me all the time. And she was the very first person that said to me, you may be on the verge of having out-of-body experiences. And I looked at her and I laughed because I didn't believe in any of that stuff. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm really having this, it'd be easy for me to check, because at that particular time, the experiences had gone from happening maybe once a week to sometimes 3 times a night. So it wasn't,
wow.
I didn't have to, that's why it got my attention, and that's why I started investigating it. And I have to admit, I didn't go to psychics and palm readers and all that to investigate it first. I went to a neurologist, and I was looking for a physical abnormality or genetic abnormality that was causing this. I wasn't looking for anything hocus pocus or magical or anything like that. So we're going to her when she said that. The first thing I did is that night, and it was amazing. I kept a journal, and my journal eventually became my book. That night, I decided I was going to conduct maybe 10 or 20 different experiments that throughout the week, and write it down and see if I could make some sense of it. And she said to me something that began to change everything. She said, if you do have one of these experiences, she said, think about coming to see me. And I thought, okay, I will think about that. So I remember I'd flown so many times, but I'd never gone from a waking state, laying down and meditating, to actually leaving the body that I could remember and ending up in a flying situation. But in that particular night, what I did is I laid down, and I began to, because I'd been practicing trying to duplicate what had happened to me before, I realized that it happened when I was very relaxed, when my breathing was very deep and steady, and I began to imitate that. Little did I know I was developing some type of, launching technique at that time. So I began to do that, and what happened was I began to feel as if my body or the bed was vibrating. And because I live in Southern California, that's not something so abnormal. I immediately, my fail-safe is I look at this little tassel that hangs from my ceiling fan, that when there's an earthquake, it's like my little Richter scale. And I can judge the level, but it wasn't moving. And I thought, okay. And then I thought, well, let me turn over. And I tried to turn over, and I couldn't move. This was the very first time I'd gone from waking state to actually the paralysis state. And then I thought, and then without me even thinking about it, all of a sudden it felt like I felt like I had my head against the headboard of my bed. And then it felt like my headboard began to move downward. And I thought, that's a strange feeling. And then I wear glasses, and I knew I hadn't gone to bed with my glasses on, and all of a sudden I could see. And not just see blurry like I normally would until I put my glasses on, but the room was very, very clear, and it had a really strange glow to it. And then I began to hear this sound, like a buzzing sound, like electrical buzzing that went along with the vibration, and it was really, real loud. And so while all this was going on, I began to think about what the woman who had the near-death experience said, and I began to think about her. And this was real strange, too, because this had never happened to me. While I began to think about her, all of a sudden, I felt as if, and this scared me hard at first, it startled me at least, I felt 2 hands grab me and kind of pull me toward the window, and I went through the window, kind of like if you've ever been in a bathtub and you've had a bubble bath, and you stick your finger in through the bubble, and it kind of adheres to your finger. That's kind of how the glass felt going through. And the next thing I knew, that really is so cool. I mean, I can almost feel it as you say it. I've never done this, but I've been well, you've come close. You've come close.
I've only come close. I've never had the kind of thing you're talking about, and you can actually prove this, can't you? In other words, you actually go elsewhere, and you've seen people, messages have transpired, that kind of thing, right?
Well, this was the first night that little bit of evidence or clue happened, because as I began to move, flying through the air, I suddenly realized this is just like flying that I've been doing all my life, except I never entered it from a waking state before. And it didn't seem like I was in control of the direction I was heading. It seemed like I was being kind of guided. And the one thing I was in control of is flying higher and faster, but I wasn't in control of the direction. And after a while, I found myself coming down toward a rooftop in a neighborhood I'd never been before, and penetrating the roof. I thought I was going to crash into it, but penetrating the roof, and I could actually see the wiring and insulation in the attic as I was moving down through the roof and eventually into a bedroom, somebody's bedroom.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And so I'm standing at the foot of the bed, and I'm thinking, am I dreaming this? And then I noticed in the bed was the woman who had the near-death experience, who told me to come think about her. Now, none of this to me was proof at all. I could have been dreaming this, and it was wishful thinking, whatever. I paid no attention to this. But I noticed that one of her legs was sticking out of the bed, and on her leg it looked like to me, a cast, like she had broken her leg.
Right.
And I thought, okay, that's an interesting thing to remember if I'm really here. And then I noticed that I knew she was married, but I noticed that her and her husband slept in twin beds. And not only was he another person, I assume it was her husband, but he was in the bed, and the bed was way on the other side of the room, which I thought, well, that's kind of strange. I thought, well, maybe they've been married a long time or something.
Is that what happens?
I don't know. May end up being in the other room. I don't know. But I thought, okay, if I'm really here, then that's another good thing to remember. And then something, I rarely talk about this. And all of a sudden, there was this being, this brilliant, light, humanoid-shaped thing. I didn't know what it was, and it was standing by the head of the bed of the woman. And I have to say, because I'd never seen anything like that, and it was startling, overwhelming, it terrified me. And I thought, all I could think about was, whatever you are, please, I don't want to experience this. And this was interesting.
Albert, just 1 second. I'm going to stop you for 1 second. I think that is where you would lose a lot of people normally. In other words, the soul traveler part, fascinating, even sounds like fun to do, and people are listening. But when you start talking about encountering a being, then you're going to lose some people who are going to say, come on, a being. But once you've embraced one, then why not the other, I guess, although it adds so much, for me, terror to the story.
Well, that's why I never mention it usually, even though it's in my book. But I don't, because it was something that I still wasn't very comfortable with. But it's been years now since I've been talking about this, so I feel more comfortable sharing it. But it terrified me. I wasn't thinking it was an angel or anything. I just knew that it was something that should not have been there and wasn't a person. But the thing about it is, it was almost as if it knew I was afraid, and it shifted to, let's say, a spectrum or frequency that I couldn't detect. That's the best way I can describe it. It's almost like turning the dial of a radio off the station. And I had a feeling it was still there, but it wasn't visibly there. So I thought to myself, well, I've had enough of this. I kind of felt like an astral cat burglar kind of thing. I thought, I want to go home. I want to go back. And with that thought, I felt those hands again. And all of a sudden, the scenery it accelerated away from me at this incredible rate of speed. The speed, it was like nothing I've ever experienced. No plane or any type of vehicle I'd ever experienced could go that fast. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was dropped from the ceiling of my bedroom and landed in my bed. And I woke up, and I was vibrating like crazy. And I turned on the light at the end of the bed, and I took my journal out, and I began to write all of this down. Now, up until this point, Art, I can actually say I didn't believe in out-of-body experiences. I didn't believe this experience was real at all, and not even curious if it was real. I just documented the experience like keeping a dream journal, and that's about it. So that was on a Saturday. On Monday, the woman that had the near-death experience was teaching another class, and I decided to go to her class. And I was sitting there in the back of her class, and I couldn't wait for the break because I wanted to ask her, and I said to her at the break, I said, I had an interesting experience dream this weekend, and I wanted to share it with her. And she said, well, what? I said, I thought that I had this experience like leaving my body, and I asked to see you, like you said, and I found myself in this bedroom, and you were in the bed. And then I looked at her physically, and she didn't have a cast on her leg. And I said, well, but in my dream, the experience that I had, you had a cast on your leg. And she said, I sleep with a heating pad on my leg, a white heating pad wrapped around my leg because I have arthritis in my knee. And I thought, coincidence? And then I said, well, I noticed that you and your husband sleep in two different beds, and in my dream, he was way on the other side of the room. And she said, yeah, my husband, so I put him way on the other side of the room because he has sleep apnea, and he snores and stops breathing in the middle of the night, and he keeps me up all night. And I thought to myself, coincidence?
Yeah.
So this is where this doesn't make sense to me because I don't believe in this stuff. But how could I dream that? That didn't make a lot of sense to me, but it did make me very, very curious. So I decided to conduct another experiment the next night. But this time, I practiced the techniques a little bit more, and I ate at the same time I ate the previous day, and I tried to set up everything the way the process that it led up to me launching the night before. Same thing happened. I began to feel really relaxed, the vibration, all that happened, and coming up out of my body, the hands, and all that. This time, this is when I was on the space station program. Now, this is another thing. I'm not going to go around talking and telling people that I'm having paranormal or out-of-body experiences and fly to Johnson Space Center and train astronauts on how to assemble the space station, too. I'm not going to do that. I'd had a secret security clearance since I was 18 years old. The first thing I worked on that was classified was the Lockheed U-2 when I was in the military. And now I'd moved through all these government programs and had this clearance. And now I have a top secret clearance, secret gold clearance, and there was no way that I was going to jeopardize 22 decades of my career talking about crazy things.
So I take it then, Albert, at this point, you would have kept all of this information tightly secured in the little journal that you were keeping. You wouldn't have talked to anybody about it. Definitely wouldn't have talked to anybody at work about this kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Except I did talk to one person at work, but I trusted her for some reason. And that was interesting. She told me, she said, well, if you think that happened, why don't you try to visit me this time? So I thought, okay. And it was my friend Kim. So, and I wrote this in my journal too. While I was flying out of my body like the night before, with the hands guiding me, this invisible guide of some sort, person, it dropped me. This is something that's interesting. It dropped me off in front of a apartment building that I'd never been to in a neighborhood. And this is something that that was a puzzle to me then, but I understand now, is I couldn't remember where I was going. And I'll fast forward. The reason for that is because you're not traveling with your organic brain. You have a consciousness that's non-organic, and it doesn't remember trivialities. But that's something I discovered later on. So I sat there and I was struggling trying to remember what was I trying to do, and then it dawned on me, oh yeah, I was trying to visit my friend Kim. And so when I remembered, all of a sudden I moved to the top floor, I moved through a wall, and I found myself in a dining room the first thing I noticed was there was a chandelier hanging from the dining room, but it was huge. I mean, it was too big for the dining room. It looked like it belonged somewhere else. And I thought, okay, if I'm really here, that's something interesting to remember. And then I moved down the hallway, and I noticed as I began to go down the hallway, and this was another interesting thing, is I wasn't walking. I was kind of sliding. Remember like the old Gumby animated things?
Yes,
it was kind of that kind of, it wasn't walking, it was like sliding, floating, moving kind of thing, except I was in contact with the floor. Wasn't floating above the floor. And I noticed I moved to the last door. The last door on the right-hand side, I remember, at the end, was open. And I moved to the door, and I came to the door, and I noticed that there was two beds in the bedroom, and there was a window in the bedroom that was in a very odd place. It wasn't in the center of the wall like you would think there were two beds on either side. It was way in the corner. And I thought, okay, that's a little odd, and that's something interesting to remember. And I moved to the window, and I looked out the window, and half of it I could see an alleyway down below. I was on the second floor, and half of the window was blocked by a telephone pole. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting thing to remember if I'm really here. So I kind of pushed out the window and was floating above the alleyway, and I was trying to remember, how do I get back home? And I remember, all right,
let me for 1 second stop you. You said, interesting thing to remember, if I'm really here. Now, to me, that says that you had a conscious awareness of the fact that you were in an altered state. Now, for example, when I dream, it's very, very real until I wake up and realize it's a dream. But never in my dream do I think, this is a cool dream, or I'm going to rewrite my dream. In other words, I'm always in that state. You had a conscious awareness of the fact that you were in this altered state, yes?
Well, that's another part of what has been happening to me all my life, is I remember when I was 5 years old, I would try to describe it to my mother. I would say, Mom, when I dream, I wake up in my dream, and then I fly, and I do things. And I didn't know how to explain it back then. And as I began to grow up, I realized, I'm having lucid dreams, and I become aware. I know that I went to sleep. I know my body is sleeping somewhere, and this is a dream that I can have fun with. And I've been doing that all my life, but never thought of it being anything other than just lucid dreaming. So,
right, but that's a big, big difference. Hold tight. We're going to do a break here, and we'll be right back. No matter where you live, don't care where you are, eventually there's going to be a power failure. It's going to go off. Now, listening to satellite radio is great stuff, but it does depend on a lot of equipment operating correctly, including maybe a computer or whatever to keep it all running. And that's where regular AM/FM radio comes in. C. Crane's CC Solar Observer Emergency Radio will give you everything you need, the news, the information, what's going on with the power failure. I mean, that's the first thing you do. When the power goes out, you run, especially at night. You run for something that'll tell you why. Well, this radio comes with AM/FM and NOAA band weather. It is powered, get this, folks, with an easy-to-use crank handle. In other words, you can crank it, and it'll come on and run and run and run, or you can take it out in the sun. It's got a flip-up solar panel. No need to have batteries at all, although it will take them. It's got outstanding reception. It's got great audio. It comes with a built-in flashlight. That's the other thing you definitely want when the power goes out, right? Flashlight and information. This gives you both. It has the ability to charge a cell phone. You imagine that? It'll charge a cell phone. I just saw World War Z, and boy, they could have used that. Weighs about 1 pound, comes with a nice handle for easy carrying. The CC Solar Observer is the one electronic device that's going to give you what you need when it goes, and I mean the power, and it will. To order the CC Solar Observer for only $49.95, not $59.95, but $49.95. Give C. Crane a call right now. Their number is 1-800-522-8863. That's 800-522-8863. You want to ask the Solar Observer. I wonder if one day Bob Crane is going to create a crank radio that gets XM. Think of it. A Crank Radio that receives. If I die and I spy to my right with my little eyes, sounds like my daughter, the light, and I spy to my left the darkness, and I've got to turn in one direction or the other. I've had these people saying, it's a trick, Art, don't go to the light, go to the darkness. Do you have any advice there?
Well, I have two different perspectives. One is my own personal experience, and the other is my almost 2-decade experience in the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And 8 million people in the United States alone have had near-death experiences. And if you just want to look at a numbers game and not belief system, there's only a handful that I know of, and I've looked and read their books, that have had negative experiences. The majority of people, and we're talking about millions, have had a positive experience. And when they've had these positive experiences, it's been with the light, as they have described it. And these people who have described the light come from all walks of life and all belief systems, and some of them with lack thereof. One of the most amazing near-death experiences, and I met the gentleman. He's a doctor. He's a blind doctor. He's been blind all of his life. But when he had his near-death experience, he could see, and he described seeing the light. So that's on the near-death experience side. Now, on my personal side, part of my experiments was to look into what is this light, because I didn't know, I didn't believe. I was raised Catholic. Catholics don't do that stuff. So I'd say about 7 to 10 days into my experiment, I actually had an amazing encounter with this brilliant, if you want to use any other word except light, illumination, white sparkler kind of thing that was blinding and piercing. And it is the one singular experience that I can tell you that changed my life forever. And that's why none of this is like a dream, because I've never had a dream that changed my life forever. What happened was, while I was having this experience, because I asked for it, I said, I want to see the light while I was out of body. I encountered this brilliant, it looked like in the middle of the darkness, there was this sparkler, like the sparklers you have on the 4th of July.
Sure.
Those white sparklers, and shards of it were going off in all directions, and it was brilliant. And I have to say, if I had physical eyes, I would have thought they probably would have been just burned away, because it was that brilliant. And the thing about it, though, is that I could sense that it wasn't just an object. And this is the thing that has never, ever happened in any other experience except for this, is I felt emotionally naked. And what I mean by that is everything that I have ever thought about inside my head, my secrets, everything throughout my entire life was out on the table in front of this for examination. Not for judgment, but for examination and reassessment. So
I guess through all this, by the way, we picked up a hum on the phone now. I have no idea why.
Oh, no.
Phone connections are really weird. It's not horrible, but it's there. The light or the darkness, which do you go to? I guess you're saying the light, right?
I wouldn't hesitate. But this is the thing, though. It's light and darkness. If you talk on a physical world, it has to do with photons. We're not talking about photons here. We're talking about a perception that is a talent that our soul has.
Okay, now I really want to know the light or the darkness. Which do you go to?
The light. I would say the light.
The light. That's all I needed was a light.
I wouldn't hesitate.
All right. You're really certain about that, right?
Yes. Yes, without a doubt.
Okay, now is it similar in soul traveling experiences and near death?
Well, there is one difference between the near death and just having out of body experiences, is that in the near death experience, from everything that has been described to me, because I haven't had one, I'm just a member. everything that's been described to me is that they are taken or shown or led or told they have to return, that kind of thing. In the out-of-body experience, you go pretty much where you want to go about 80% of the time. And the reason that I say 80 is because it's not 100%, because there are some things that you're led or directed to encounter, but most of the time you choose when you go back, and because it's so much fun, you have to almost fight your way to keep from coming back, but you're drawn back eventually. But it's
okay. I would like to know this. Have you heard of anybody having a negative experience when soul traveling, or near death? Of course, that can be very negative. But soul traveling when you're outside your body, are you aware of any negative experiences?
Well, yes, mine, my own. But I can say this: it was when I was afraid and fearful in the very beginning, and all that's gone away. But in the beginning, I had a lot of frightful experiences. And it was basically because I didn't know that I was in control of the experience. I was a passenger instead of a driver.
Huh. Okay. So there is a sort of a little cautionary note here about doing this. In other words, it doesn't always turn out well. But then again, sometimes you have bad dreams, too.
There's a learning curve, so to speak.
I bet.
And the learning curve is about yourself. It's about your fears. It's about you. And it's about you discovering that your fears are founded. And that is something that through this experience you begin to feel more confident in. And it's like you and I both are cat lovers, so I always use this analogy. It's like I remember when I first got my kitten, and I brought it home, and it was terrified of the surroundings, and then would go usually hide somewhere and then come out, later on or several days later. But over a period of time, the cat gets very used to your living room, and it's running all around the house. Now you want to let the cat outside. So now there's this new opening, this new doorway, so to speak. And the cat will go and sniff around the doorway, and you may find it sitting on the porch, but the slightest little bit of noise that happens, the cat's going to come running back in. Well, over a period of time, it's going to be in the bushes, and eventually you're going to be saying, kitty, kitty, and the cat's going to be gone somewhere. Well, that's how you are in the out-of-body experience. In the beginning, because you have all these fears that you've learned through your life that people have shared with you, not knowing that they really weren't founded, you've embraced those fears. And you take those fears into this altered state with you. So they, unfortunately, are capable of manifesting.
All right. And well, if I see something that's got big red glowing eyes, trust me, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not looking for that kind of OBE. I want. Whoops.
Oh man.
What was that?
Sorry, that was my fault. I leaned on the button. Forgive me.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah, that's my fault.
So anyway, I don't want to spend the whole show on this. I just kind of wanted to update people. If you're having an experience, folks, like, for example, Albert described, where you're absolutely paralyzed, that's the beginning. If you're having an experience where you feel this intense, I don't know what you call it, buzzing, kind of a buzzing, I would say. This is the beginning. Now, you can go from there and have a full OBE and go out of your body. It'll take a little doing, but you can do it. Am I right, Albert?
Yes, Art, but I just don't want to leave this loose end, and because a lot of people are already frightened and terrified of this experience without me even saying anything. And I want to tell them that, yes, in the beginning I was afraid, but over a period of time I wasn't. And because I began to not be afraid, I began to explore this. And years and years later, it's the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me in my life. And not only me, people that I've talked to and taught how to do this. My mother had frightful experiences all her life, and then her 70s and 80s, she had amazing out-of-body experiences. So I don't want people turned off by this and thinking that it's going to be something horrific and long-term, and it's not. It's going to be something wonderful. And yes, you can learn to leave your body, which I didn't know and didn't believe in, by relaxation. And I didn't know anything about meditation and all these exercises that all these shamans and mystics would do. I didn't know anything about that. All I knew is that it would happen to me normally without me trying. And it happened when I was relaxed, and it happened when my breathing was steady and that type of thing. And that's all I tried to do, is duplicate that.
Wow. Well, so you recommend people have courage, and if they're find themselves on the edge, and I've been there many times, they just go ahead and take the plunge and go out of your body. Let yourself go. Yes?
Well, not just because of to have the experience. Because it's like it expands. Let's say the first part of the experience, yes, it's a lot of fun and the exploratory and all that. But the bottom line is you really have to ask yourself, what are you that you can do these kind of things? So it goes beyond that. So it goes beyond just jumping on a roller coaster. What are you that you're capable of leaving a physical body, having encounters with non-physicals, flying, doing all this kind of things, and we haven't even talked about having encounters with deceased loved ones.
Well,
so
you're a human with a soul is what you are, and that soul is capable of being separated from your body.
But not everybody believes in the soul. I mean, I was raised in the Catholic Church where the soul was something you kept in your pocket practically, and once in a while you dropped it and it got dirty and you had to take it to a priest and he cleansed it for you, and you keep put it back in your pocket and walk around with it. It wasn't something that you could relate to or understand, at least in my world. But to say you have a soul versus that you are a soul, to me, is profoundly different. And through the out-of-body experience, that's what I found, and that's what a lot of people are finding out, is you don't have a soul, you are a soul. And the thing is if you are a soul and you've come to this earth to have an earthly human experience, why did you do that? And the out-of-body experience, I really truly believe that it's one of the most incredible tools that we've been given here to actually find out who and what we really are and why we came to this planet in the first place, the purpose of our lives.
And you would conclude the purpose of our lives is what?
To evolve. And that means in a lot of ways. Some of them are interactive with our fellow man, fellow souls, and to evolve internally as far as who you are, what you are, how you see your environment, and I mean the physical and the non-physical, and to perfect, to become better than you were. And as you become better, which I've found out, the more I evolve, the more I'm able to accomplish these experiences and go further and see things that I never ever would have dreamed of. So I really believe that every one of us has come here to evolve to a higher being that's going to open the doors to miracles. I really believe that.
Well, you should have done, by now, you should have done a very great deal of evolving.
I'm still working on it. Spiritual evolution is a ongoing process, but
I
it's fun
understand.
and challenging.
Is your book, by the way, generally still available if people want to learn about all this?
As far as I know, it's still on Amazon.com. I think Barnes & Noble is still carrying it, and a multitude of other bookstores all over the place. And for my Spanish-speaking friends, I have a new book out called Viajero Astro, and it's about my story and a little bit more than Soul Traveler, and it's available in Spanish also.
No kidding. All right. A lot of people, I think, will enjoy that. So that was it. And it's going to wind right into this next topic. And I don't know how, but we're about to find out, I guess. You're doing some strange stuff. I was really surprised. I looked at some of the photographs that you, for example, supplied for tonight's show. And suddenly you're into robots, but not just robots for paranormal investigation. Is that right?
Right. Yes. And, well, let me tell you how this happened.
Please do.
First of all, I'm trying to understand the out-of-body experience, and I'm trying to research that through my own projections and document it and that type of thing. And then I'm teaching people and documenting theirs. And then the next door, because I really think that the paranormal community or investigative community does themselves a disservice by putting up all these imaginary barriers between different disciplines. And what I mean by that is just because I'm having out-of-body experiences doesn't mean that it's related to ghost investigations. Doesn't mean that it's not related to UFO investigation, that kind of thing. We don't know. We know it's a mystery. So one of the things, because of my background in aerospace, to me, the paranormal and out-of-body experiences is an unknown. And in my world, what we do with unknowns, especially in NASA, is that we send out probes to explore the unknown. Before man, there was Mariner that crashed on the moon long before Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. So we send out these probes. Also, when we're investigating the deep, the ocean, we also send probes. So it made a lot of sense to me. And now, I've been building robots. I'm a member of the Riverside Robotics Society. And what we do is we design, build, and autonomous robots. We also put on shows. So that was a hobby of mine. And then paranormal investigation was also an interest of mine. And then out-of-body experiences. So these three things are evolving around each other and bumping into each other. And I realized, let me tell you how that I realized. I got called by a realtor in Rialto, California. She had this house that it was a 100-year-old home, and the guy that she usually sends to clean up the home, something happened to him at the home that terrified him so bad that he refuses to go back to the home to continue cleaning. So she's a realtor. She says, I don't know about this stuff, but I'd like to have you go and your team, go there and investigate this house and find out what happened. So I thought, okay. So we go to the house, and it's one of those old homes that you see in the movies, and including a hidden pathway behind the bookcase that slides out. It's really, really quite interesting. Well, one of the things I noticed is during the investigation of that particular home is that when we open the bookcase and look into the pathway or the passageway, I noticed that the layer of dust was so thick it had probably been there for at least 80 years or more. I don't know exactly, but a very, very, very long time. And I thought about this. The last thing, being a researcher and scientist, the last thing I want to do is disturb an investigative scene. And I was trying to figure out, how do we investigate this pathway without just messing up everything and ruining and contaminating our evidence? And that's when it dawned on me about building a robotic probe, autonomous robotic probe, not radio controlled, but autonomous robotic probe.
Okay, when you say autonomous, you mean?
That can think for itself.
Think for itself.
Right. Something that, like for instance, right now, the probes that we have on Mars, they are semi-autonomous and practically, they're semi-autonomous, meaning that you can control them and guide them where you want it to go. And in certain situations, emergency, when it's on its own, because the signal takes so long to get there, that it can make certain decisions on its own also. So and a fully autonomous is something that can just make decisions, period. You don't need to interact with it, and it will accomplish its mission. Kind of like the Predator drones. The Predator drones are semi-autonomous, where there's a pilot and he controls it and he takes off and he lands it, but there's some automated programs that you can punch into it that it'll accomplish its mission on its own. So that's what semi and autonomous is.
Well, that's very serious stuff. I mean, to create a robot is one thing, hard enough, God knows, but to make it autonomous or even semi-autonomous, wow. What kind of decisions can your robots make?
Well, let's start off with the first one. The first one is, and this is another thing, is I like to build my robots out of discarded items because it's kind of like recycling to me. I want to make my robots green as possible. So everything, I go around scrounging and taking apart VCRs and you name it. So, and it has what's called a microcontroller. Now, what a microcontroller is, it's a brain, basically. And it's a computer, and you can upload programs into that brain using a language called C that brain will use and execute its mission. So what you do is you attach sensors and things like that to the brain, and you attach, it's kind of like a person. Our brain, we have 5 senses that is attached to our brain, and then the motor functions, you attach that to the robot, and then you upload a program that tells all of that how to work together and what to do. So what my robot is capable of doing, and this is one thing that was really important for me, and I realized that it was limiting my investigations, was something called time on station. And time on station is where you show up at an investigative site. You have maybe 2 to 4 hours of investigative time, and not including setup time, and then you're gone. And that to me was the most inefficient way of investigating a site that you could come up with. What happens with the robot is your time on station increases to the duration that the robot is capable of performing. Like my robots are capable of going 24/7. And the reason they're capable of doing that is because it runs off of a battery, and then it can power itself it has a solar array on top of a solar panel on top of it that it can charge itself with ambient light. And
all right. Well, what if there is no ambient light? What if it's in what if it's in an old house, in some secret passageway? How much operational time do you have there?
Well, this is a typical how the program runs. It has enough power to last all night long, and during the daytime, when the power gets low, it seeks a light source, and it'll sit and park. It'll sit and park in the light source and recharge, and then continue its programming until I tell it to stop.
It's making the decision to do that itself, right?
Right. Yes. It uses light sense. It uses what I call as sharp infrared sensors, and it also uses like a photo sensor also to detect the light. And then it'll move and park in a particular location, like it can even park under a light or a beam of sunlight coming through a curtain or any type of light source. It'll park there, recharge the battery up to 12 volts. It's a 12-volt battery, and then it will continue to run its mission. Now, it has an AMF meter, electromagnetic field meter. It has night vision cameras. It has audio. It has digital recorders. It has night vision.
Wow.
And it has everything that an investigator would walk around with. It has that, except it can stay 24/7. It doesn't get tired, and it only eats power to survive. So it increased my time on station to 24 hours, and which also eliminated what I also call needle in a haystack investigations. And what that is you go out in the middle of the night and you pray that you find something, even though you don't have the slightest clue when it's going to happen. And that is the worst way.
Yep, that is so cool. Hold on, Doctor. We've got to take a break here. That is so cool. Listen, I have received a lot of comments now, finally, about the C-Crane FM transmitter. I've been telling you about it, and finally I'm beginning to see people going, wow, I bought one of these, and it's really cool. It really works. The FM transmitter is good for, well, it's a transmitter, first of all. So, if you wanted to have your own little show, I guess you could do that. But beyond that, you hook things up to it. MP3 player, for example, internet radio, XM Sirius radio, whatever you want. A lot of people don't want to be stuck in one place. For example, this is a long-form talk radio show, right? And you're interested in the material, but you have to sit near the computer. Wrong. You get the C-Crane FM transmitter. Just hook it up to the computer's audio output, plug a little plug in. And then you can go around your house and you can listen to it on any radio, including one that you'd carry around with you portable. Now, it's too cool not to get. Now, I want to remind everybody that you should not hook up a 36-inch wire to it to increase the coverage. You're not supposed to do that. It operates from 88.3 to 107 megahertz. In other words, the whole FM band. You can put it wherever you want. It's got a little LCD readout on it. I mean, this thing is absolutely trick. It's small enough it'll fit into the palm of your hand, but it'll broadcast to your whole house. It's got an adjustable input lever for near broadcast quality audio, stereo in fact. It's rated up to 45 feet line of sight, but you know, if you have that extra wire on there and if you do a little research on the internet about it, well, trust me. To order the FM transmitter for just, it's the FM transmitter 2, by the way, for just $49.95, call the C. Crane Company right now. Get started. The number is 800-522-8863. And then you can give me a review. In fact, you're welcome to call up and give me a review here on the air. That's 800-522-8863. The FM transmitter by C. Crane. Investigation. And in fact, actually, it might be a very good use because when you involve human beings, you're involving everything. Emotion, sensory input. That's a kind way of putting it, I guess. In other words, sensory input that is flawed, to be honest with you. That kind of thing. I wonder if that was part of the reasoning for creating robots for this purpose. What about it, Albert?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head. Humans, even though we're awesome vehicles and amazing creations, we're limited. Just a simple thing like if I were an investigator and I'm standing in a room, everything in front of me, and I have a camera in front of me, everything in front of me I can take a picture of. But I'm missing what happens behind me.
Right.
My robot can see 360 degrees all the time, and if anything moves, it's going to snap a picture of it or record an audio or an image of some sort. Humans, we can't do that.
Okay,
so
yeah, you're absolutely right. It's got a 360-degree sensory view. That's
right.
Really cool. Okay.
Right. So what happens is the amount of data and interesting data, not just blank screen, the amount of data that I collect increases tremendously, where I actually start getting things and I don't end up having these needle in a haystack investigations where you spend hours walking around trying to find something and you leave with nothing. Also, some cases we would go to a location and spend the night. Well, when you sleep, you're losing investigative time, and the robot can sit there and just investigate constantly. Another thing is I just did a proposal to a foundation where I'm designing a robot that is capable of hunting for Bigfoot. And one of the things
Really? Now, wait a minute. To hunt for Bigfoot, you're going to have to be out in the middle of the forest. You're going to have to be going over territory that I can see night vision. That certainly would be effective. But my goodness, you're going to be in rough territory for a robot.
The robot's going to be in rough territory, but this is the thing. All the shows that are investigations I've ever seen, they go there to the site. They stay maybe at the most overnight to maybe a few days, and they sleep in the tents, and then they go running out at night to try to track down a sound or noise, and then they come back and they pack up and leave. That a robot the one I'm working on right now is capable of climbing over fallen trees that are almost waist high, because it has to be able to maneuver out in this wooded area by itself. And what it's capable of doing is that it's capable of, like my smaller robot, of charging during the day and hunting 24/7. So it doesn't take 24 hours or even all day to charge. So while the human investigator is sleeping or just running around in one particular area, like a submarine, and I'm really, you mentioned Tom Clancy, and he was a huge reason that I put I put sonar sensors on my robot, is that the robot is capable of passive of monitoring. It has active capability too, which means it sends out a signal, but it also has passive where it's capable of just listening or responding to some type of light source. So now it's sitting out in the middle of the forest by itself. Things are moving around, and it's capable of moving toward that object by itself and investigating that object alone. Even if the robot is, let's say, the worst case scenario, even if it's destroyed by a Bigfoot or some kind of animal out there, we're still going to get incredible pictures leading up to that event.
Sure. I mean, in most horror movies, you mentioned, it's a short period, 24 hours. Most horror movies I've ever seen, the girl with the biggest bust gets dismembered quickly, and then everybody goes home.
Well, some investigators, and I'll tell you, we seem like a brave lot, but some of us aren't so brave. And I've actually had investigators scream and run away from a situation in the middle of a paranormal event or anomaly. So one of the things robots don't do is they don't run in terror and drop cameras and go screaming into the night.
Such a good point, yes. So when did you start building paranormal investigative robots?
I'd say about 4 years ago, I started putting the two together. And the first time I investigated a site with the robot, the results was overwhelming. I just thought, oh my God, eureka, because it was capable of doing so much that I wasn't capable of doing before.
Okay, well, I want to know what have you investigated and what evidence have you uncovered with the robots?
Well, recently, the more interesting one is a place out by the West Coast. It's called a place called Dead House. And what that is a number of people have gone to this house and investigated it. But one of the things that happened to one of my investigators, and this is something that I don't see a lot of people talking about, is my investigator was actually attacked physically by something unseen. We couldn't know what it was.
Do you mean you're calling it your investigator? You mean your robot?
My human. No, my human.
Oh, you're a human. Okay.
Yeah. My human investigator, he was attacked and grabbed on his arm, and it left this huge bruise on his forearm, which I sent you a picture of.
Right. Well, pictures on the website, artbell.com, folks.
And that wasn't the first time that something negative happened to one of my investigators. Another time, we were at this location in Canoga Park where my investigator would walk into the room and the camera would fail, and she'd walk out of the room and the camera would come back on, and she'd walk back in the room trying to snap a picture, and in the process of that, all of a sudden she grabbed her throat and said, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Scared all of us, we ushered her out into the living room, and it took her a little while to regroup and to recover from whatever was happening in there. That would not have happened with a robot. And that, when in the particular location at Dead House, I have to admit, I've been on maybe 100 investigations, and I'm never affected in any way, shape, or form. But at this particular place, this was the first time that I ever got nauseous and suffered from severe abdominal cramps in this one particular room. When I would go in the room, I would get sick, and then when I'd go out and leave the room and go outside, I feel fine. So because of these two things, my investigator being grabbed and bruised, and because of the physical illness that I felt, we sent in my Servo, my fully autonomous robot, who was capable of taking all kinds of readings and coming back with mapping the particular area and measuring all the electromagnetic spikes that were in the reading and in the room, and taking video footage of it. And
all right, now I've really got to ask you, I'm on my own website, artbell.com, looking at the pictures right now. These are some pretty doggone good-looking robots. I would swear Robot 1 is R2-D2. It almost looks like R2-D2. Did you model it after that?
Well, those particular three, the R2-D2, the B9 from Lost in Space, and the WAL-E are robots that are examples of what my robotic, the Robotic Society, the type of expos that we put on. Those aren't my robotic probes. The Servo is the one that was built from, it's like a Roomba.
Servo 2. It says Servo 2, Investigative Robotic Vehicle Observer.
Right. He's the Roomba on steroids. That's the one that is capable of autonomous investigation. The other one, which is, one of the investigations I did was with a little girl. And she was having the glass. This was interesting. The glass in a picture kept breaking at night, just shattering in the middle of the night. There was nothing was thrown at it. It would just break, and we found glass bits and pieces all over the floor right below it. So what we did is I put Servo in the room with her, and it stayed in the room with her all night long, and it was capable of monitoring the room, and it picked up some audio sounds of something moving around, and it picked up a shadowy image by the window, which there was nothing out there. But the thing about it is Servo, every time it would move to take a photo or something, it would wake her up and scare her because it doesn't look, all that friendly. So that's why I created, designed, and built Oscar, which Oscar, you notice, is a little bit more colorful and a little more friendly, and it has 6 or 7 facial expressions and is more interactive and works better with children when I do investigations with children.
Yeah, if I was a kid, I would like Oscar much, much better.
Yeah, they seem to like Oscar is very popular.
I can imagine. How long have you been doing this for? Actively investigating.
Well, because I remember you asked me about this one time, about moving into the paranormal and leaving the out-of-body experience arena, which is really, I haven't, because the out-of-body experiences that I've been having are paranormal in itself, and I started having encounters with deceased relatives and things like that, and to me, that branched into me trying to bridge the two together, that they were related. So I would say that I've been investigating the paranormal probably since 1997, at least.
All right. Straight on question, please. Do you believe ghosts are real?
I don't like to use the word ghost. Usually I use anomaly, but there is an anomaly that is intelligent, that is capable of speaking languages, including English, that is capable of interacting with the physical world by touching and bruising us, scratching us. I've been witness to.
All right, so now you're I want a straight on answer here. Don't be afraid of the word. If it was once a living being and it is now present in whatever form and noticeable to the physical world, we're going to call it a ghost. Now, is it real or not? Are there really ghosts or not?
Yes. I don't understand them completely.
Straight on answer.
Yeah, I don't understand them completely, but yes, the human consciousness survives the death of the physical body, and it survives in different states. Some of the states are capable of interacting with the physical world, and actually, this is the ones that the cases I think are the more interesting ones are not when you get some nonsense EVP that says the window is open or the couch is brown or something like that. That to me is ridiculous and doesn't really go anywhere. The ones that I think are very interesting is when it's interactive, when you ask a question and it actually answers the question. And that's ones I've had where I asked I was in this situation on the Queen Mary, and I asked, "What is your name?" And and whatever it was answered Johnny. So those are the ones I think are very, very interesting.
All right, before we go on, here's what I want to know. What produces a ghost? There are many people, Albert, who feel that an untimely death, a murder, a violent death, is more likely to produce a ghost than, I don't know, everyday passing away, if there is such thing as everyday passing away. Do you think that is true? What have you learned?
Well, I've learned that probably has very little to do with it, and what has more to do with producing a lingering conscious entity is the lack of awareness. And what I mean by that is the lack of awareness on what to expect when you do die. We condition ourselves to believe certain things here and the physical that are going to happen to us, but it's not necessarily true when you pass on the other side. So that lack of awareness of what to really expect and because there's no time, it keeps you in this limbo, so to speak, this lingering area where you may try to interact or move around in the physical locations that meant something to you emotionally.
Do you think that a lot of ghosts don't know they have passed on?
That's exactly what I mean by the lack of awareness. Most don't realize it because there isn't a huge change as far as the way you feel. And it's very similar. Maybe it may be more enlightened and more. You can become more aware, but it's really not a huge difference. And if you look at all the stories of people having near-death experiences, they describe trying to walk around their houses, interact with the mailman, because they're not aware that. Because I grew up in Catholic school, they never talked about near-death experiences. So before I had all these experiences out of body, and before my investigations, I can honestly say if I were to pass away before then, I would have been looking for Gabriel and all the things that I was taught that was going to happen to me, and that would keep me in a particular area because there's no time for what we would call a haunting, and keep me there for 200 to 300 years or more. But it's not permanent.
Not permanent. I'm going to tell a ghost story, I guess, when Halloween comes. I've only got one. My big ghost story is not such a great ghost story, but it's the truth. When Ramona passed, my wife passed, I was finally alone in the house by myself. And let me tell you something, Albert. This is really amazing. I started getting cold. And I mean really, really cold. I couldn't sleep. I was awake all night. I was freezing. I actually went and got in a shower, turned the water on hot. Or as hot as I could take it, and sat there in the shower and let it pour over me. And no matter what I did, I don't care what I did, I could not get warm. Moreover, even though I didn't see a ghost, I didn't see Ramona, she was absolutely there, and she was all around me. Her presence was, what's the right word, overpowering, that she was there. And this went on for some days, Albert, actually went on for some days, and it totally freaked me out. So I don't know what that was, but it lifted and eventually went away. But I mean, for sure, she was there.
Well, maybe I can add a piece of the puzzle for you here.
Feel free. Yeah,
free. What I've noticed is because I walk around and part of my gear is a laser temperature sensor, and to measure different, cold spots and things like that, or alleged cold spots, I should say. But one of the things I notice is that we humans are capable of sensing things other than temperature, and in others, we're capable of sensing ions. And when ions move and collect in a certain area, what that does is that gives us a feeling of cold or coolness. And it just so happens that paranormal anomalies or ghosts, when they manifest themselves in particular areas, they draw in a lot of ions, start moving toward their area, wherever they are. So that makes sense that you could not get warm because it wasn't a temperature reason why you were sensing the cold. It was when people sense cold, it's usually because of the ions moving, but it's still definitely something paranormal.
Well, I would say it could have been shock, of course. I was in a kind of a shock, but it was way more than that, Albert. The sense of her presence was so overwhelming. And there are many religions that feel that when a person passes, that for at least a period of time, they do remain earthbound, And then eventually, after some days or weeks, they do move on. But typically 3 days. A lot of people talk about 3 days. Have you heard that?
Well, Dr. Melvin Morris, I think he wrote a book a while back about titled Parting Visions. And he talked about that period of time after a person passes away where they kind of visit and say goodbye to their loved ones.
Right.
And that goes on maybe, 72 to 48 hours or whatever. That is not a fixed thing. And what happens that I've noticed, and I just had, my mother passed away almost 2 years ago, and I had incredible experiences with her since then I haven't talked about with anybody yet. But what I noticed is that the more I thought about her and the more emotional I felt about her loss, the more that presence felt that I had of her being here. And I knew it. I was like,
well, see, all right. See, the people who would debunk this kind of thing would say, well, sure, the more you thought about her, the more of an effect there was because you were manipulating, in essence, we've got to break your own brain to bring that on. Albert Taylor is my guest. I think the brain does do that a little bit. I started getting cold, and I never turn the temperature up in here. I've got this wonderful air conditioner that will go anywhere I tell it to go, and usually I like it nice and cool in here. But I started getting too cold just as I was talking about it, so I had to turn the temperature up. So proves my point, I think.
Well, you touched on something that I think is very important to address, and just like when Galileo was talking, up until Galileo, the church believed that the sun and all the other planets revolved around the earth. And Galileo made a mistake. He actually observed what is actually happening today, but he tried to let it describe that and let that influence spiritual and religious teachings. And that's what got him into trouble. So when you talk about your experience with Ramona, who I remember well, and I've talked to her many times and really had a wonderful time with her, and I talk about experiences with my mother, I think it's ethically important that a paranormal researcher should not try to invalidate your experience or try to invalidate mine. Also, on the same regard, I think it's important to realize that your experience and my experience is not data and not to be presented as proof of any sort that the paranormal exists. That's something else that needs to be collected in a very
I would never in a million years present that as evidence of the paranormal. Right. What I would say, though, is that what you're doing at least has a chance of coming up with hard evidence of the paranormal. And I wonder if you have yet. I mean, you've been doing this for a while now. You go to haunted areas, I presume. How do you have to travel to do this, right?
Yes. I have data. I have pictures of things that I still can't explain, Art. For instance, in the Rialto home that I did, the 100-year-old home. When we went back and set up a camera, what we did is there's a shot where it's a static camera, which also robots do very, very well. It's a shot of my investigators, maybe about 5 of us, entering a doorway and then walking, you can see in the distance through the doorway of us walking up a distant stairwell. And milliseconds after we go up the stairwell, this shocked me. I think I've watched this maybe 1,000 times. There is a transparent, partial humanoid figure from the waist up. You can see the arms, the part of the torso, and a little bit of the head and the neck area that moves through that area, through the doorway, following us. So I don't know what that was. It shouldn't have been there. It appeared to be humanoid. It appeared to be moving on its own, and it was because it was following us. I'm thinking it was aware. This, to me, is the type of evidence or data that I would be definitely willing to present, but not to invalidate personal experiences. I think we're capable, and that's what regarding the out-of-body experience, that's why I'm trying to bridge the two and remove barriers, because I believe that the human body, the human consciousness, is capable of sensing what we call paranormal, because I don't think it's really paranormal. I think it's normal, because in our natural state, we're not physical beings. I definitely believe that the human consciousness is capable of sensing these things, so I wouldn't want to invalidate it. I would use it as a tool to support something that would be a little bit more concrete and collected in a little bit more research manner. So it's helpful, but it should not drive any particular investigation.
Okay. You said you build these robots to some degree out of old VCRs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, what you could do is give me your address here on the air, and then we could request that everybody out there with an old VCR. I'm telling you could make an army of robots.
Yeah, that would make me real popular in my neighborhood, I'm sure.
I can see your yard now piled high with these old VCRs. But I can see they would have some pretty good parts in them, actually, mechanical parts and otherwise, to build from. So
I can see the citation from the city right now. I can visualize it and the dollar sign behind it.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the thing about being a member of this club that I'm a member of, is that you don't realize, and it's a kind of a subculture, robot builders, and you don't realize what type of everyday technology that surrounds us, that's in everyone's home right now, that has multiple uses. The infrared sensor inside of a remote control, the infrared reader in a VCR, the motors that run the tape, all these little things can be used, and adding in, when you marry all these things to a microcontroller, a brain that's capable of reading the data coming off of these sensors. And then,
what do you use for a brain? I'm curious. What do you use for the brain?
Well, there's a thing that I fell in love with. It's called a Romeo Arduino. And basically, amateur robot builders use what's called an Arduino platform. It's an Arduino controller, microcontroller. Okay. There are different aftermarkets and offshoots that have developed they use all the same language, the Arduino language, which is C, and sometimes C++. But I found a particular microcontroller in England when I was there that is capable of doing amazing things. It does everything I want it to do, and that is the ones that I put inside my robots, because what it's capable of doing is not only sensing all the type of data, recording all the type of data that I want, but it's actually capable of moving the robot in very, very detailed and precise areas that I want. And it's easily programmable and extremely powerful. So it's called a Romeo Arduino.
Okay. Here's a question for you. I mean, I can understand when you were working on the International Space Station, the F-117 or SDI, you were getting paid very well for high-level work. But how does a soul traveler, robot investigating paranormal guy eat?
Well, my books take care of my income as far as soul traveler and things like that. But it's just interesting. I just got through filming a sizzle reel for a show regarding the robots. So there's interest, and people are interested in what I do. And through all the things that I just got back. I was in England lecturing, so all those and I'm going to be lecturing again here shortly in Anaheim. So all those little things that I do kind of piece together and help me to continue what I do, and I love what I do.
Oh, I bet you do. But as I mentioned, it's going to cost money. I mean, building robots costs money. Traveling to various haunted locations to deploy one's robots has got to be expensive.
Well, I've been affiliated. I'm sorry to cut you off. I've been affiliated with several research facilities in the past for a long time, and they have spent, thank goodness, I'm so appreciative, they have spent a lot of money supporting my investigations since 1996, I'd say. So they've helped out a tremendous amount.
All right. Now, let's get back to Bigfoot for a second. Bigfoot is a hot topic everywhere. You said your robots would be capable of Bigfoot investigation. How would you deploy your robot to look for Bigfoot?
Well, first of all, it would have a charging station that it could come back to. If it couldn't find the charging station, it would have a solar panel and sensors to detect light sources so they can go and sit just like my small robot does. So
your robots never have a problem, do they? They know to go to the light.
I haven't had a problem. The problem would only be the programmer, me. Yeah, I'm the one who comes up with.
Yeah, that was kind of a joke. They know to go to the light. They need it for their batteries, right?
Yes, and anything I tell it to do in the program, I test it. I mean, a lot. You'll do a lot of R&D on it, and only when I feel confident that it's capable of performing the function with the minimum amount of input, if sometimes none at all, only then do I place the robots in the field. And so far, every time I have placed a robot in the field, I have never had a failure, and it's accomplished what I set out for it to do. But you can't just haphazardly do that. You have to, it's kind of like when you're cutting wood. They say measure twice, cut once. Well, when you're doing robotics and you're doing investigations, you have to go over it. It's just like when NASA launches probes to anywhere. That probe goes through testing that you would not believe. It also has redundancy just in case something fails. So you try to come up with any possible contingency and situation that you would have to adapt to and incorporate that into the design and the programming so that it can accomplish its mission. And so far, I've been pretty successful at that.
Well, it's such a fascinating idea. I mean, your robots will go, I guess, where humans probably don't want to go in terms of paranormal investigation. And moreover, they will catch things that humans won't catch. They have a 360-degree look around, and they can take a picture, I guess, instantly in any direction they want to. It really is a fabulous idea. Have you caught a full-on entity yet?
Well, let me just address the Bigfoot thing, just to put a capper on that here.
Or Bigfoot.
The thing about robotics versus humans is that I really believe, and I told this to my producers, I really believe if you give me enough time, I'm going to find something. Because there's not going to be a downtime. So I believe it's going to move in the direction, even if, let's say, the Bigfoot or whatever we want to call this thing, it's sleeping or it finds a little cave at night. Well, my robot is going to eventually find that cave. It's going to move. Every time it moves closer and closer to it. It's picking it up, different sensors and motion and things like that. And it's eventually going to narrow down the space and find wherever this source is. So
you're telling me your robot could track a Bigfoot into a cave?
It can track it. And matter of fact, the design that I have, and it's the same program. It's a modified program. I use it on Servo. Servo is capable of finding doorways under tables. It's capable of finding a lot of things because it uses infrared technology to measure its environment, and it calculates where an opening is, and it makes the changes to move in that direction. So it's really not that hard as far as physically. The real key is making sure that the program can adapt and that you have the right sensors on to accomplish whatever the task is. So, yeah, definitely.
All right. I've got a gal here who sent a message through the wormhole, I guess, because she got frustrated. She cannot find your photographs. Come on, folks. If you can get to the point where you can send me a message, that means you're on artbell.com. Once you're on artbell.com, just look for the name. We've got guest names up there. One of them is Albert Taylor. Click on that. Click on Albert Taylor's name, and then you'll get the robot pictures. And I understand it's frustrating if you're on a website and you can't find something, but it's really not that hard. Please just do that. And then I see you with a picture of a robotic helicopter.
Right. Yeah, that's my latest one. It's the Condor. I found a microcontroller that is capable of measuring in 3 different planes, dimensions, and it has. I haven't put it on yet, but I have different types of cameras. One of the things I want to use, because there's a lot of investigations I do on the ground, but I've been approached by people who want me to investigate UFOs. I've even spoken at MUFON.
This helicopter, I want to specify, if you haven't seen it, if you're not looking at the photographs, this is not a toy helicopter. It is, but I mean, it's a big helicopter. You're a big guy, and so it gives me a reference for the size of this helicopter, and it's pretty doggone big.
Yeah, and it's capable of traveling at 80 miles an hour.
Wow.
The blade tips have been tracked at 200 miles an hour. So it's dangerous. It's capable of literally cutting off your head. The blade tips are made of fiberglass, so it has to be respected just like you would respect any type of flying vehicle.
Wow. And this helicopter is going to be used for UFO investigations and, I guess, paranormal as well. Is it noisy? Is it quiet? What?
It's so quiet. What I do is I take it for a walk down the street, literally. So it's hovering out in front of me, walking in front of me. I take it for a walk like I would walk my dog. It's very quiet.
Really?
Very quiet. Very quiet. And it is the most amazing thing. I've flown it off the cliffs at Leo Carrillo Beach and over the waves, and it's just an amazing vehicle. But the thing that I want to use it for is I got approached by a UFO phenomena or sighting that happened in Northern California that I want to use it for that particular area to trace the path of the vehicle that was photographed and see if I can measure some type of readings and things like that from the elevation that it was spotted at.
You know, it seems to me, Albert, that you would be lucky if you didn't cause UFO reports with that thing. Right?
People, unidentified is the key word, right? If we don't know what it is, I remember when I was working on the stealth fighter, and people would get glimpses of it, and this was before the Air Force even acknowledged it, is people would report it as a UFO sighting. So something that they don't necessarily understand doesn't mean that it's necessarily extraterrestrial.
Well, here's something I want to ask you about. There was a story recently of, I guess there was a grandma in her house, right? And I think it was the police or one of the alphabet agencies, I'm not sure, but they were flying a helicopter drone, and this was outside this lady's house, and she totally freaked out, and she went and got her 20 gauge and just blew this thing with birdshot right out of the sky. And
wow.
Frankly, if you saw something like that hovering outside your window, that might be your first inclination. This is something awful, and I'm going to dispatch it.
I would say that I don't know about other than I've used it in California extensively, and most people who see it immediately know what it is. And kids, as a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. I haven't had people afraid of it. I've had them forget how dangerous it is and had them walk up on it and get too close. I haven't really had any. So that, to me, in my experience, has been more of a threat where people would, and especially children, go running up on it rather than be terrified. Because helicopters, I first started flying radio-controlled helicopters, maybe 30 years ago, maybe even more. I was in the military when I first got my first radio-controlled helicopter, and that was in the late 70s. So they've been around for a very, very, very long time. They've just gotten better and smarter and are capable of doing things that a lot of helicopters aren't capable of doing. Like the one that I'm holding is capable of flying inverted, upside down, and doing loops.
You're kidding. I didn't know any helicopter could do that.
Yeah, it's capable of hovering upside down and doing loops. So
I thought people said loops were impossible, that it was a urban legend of some kind.
Well, there are two helicopters that are capable of doing that right now. One of them is ours, one is foreign. The Apache Longbow is capable of doing rolls and loops. So we do have a helicopter that is capable of doing that. And how it works is that when it goes upside down, the prop blades invert. They change the pitch.
Oh.
So you're no longer downward.
I understand. So I've got it. All right.
Right.
But it can be done.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
It wouldn't make any sense otherwise. So thank you for explaining that.
And believe me, I've crashed a lot of helicopters learning that process.
I bet you have. I've seen advertisements for the newer helicopters you can buy for not that much money anymore, and they're amazing. I mean, they can be hovering in front of you, and you can take your hand and push them away, and the GPS in them will return them slowly right to where they were.
Right. The one that, the Condor that I'm holding, it has a auto gyro inside of it that it actually stabilizes itself. And you can put different types of other sensors in it that is capable of doing that. But the little helicopter, the little toys, which is really interesting because when I first got into this, they didn't exist. So they've really, I mean, almost any 7-year-old can fly some of these helicopters now. But the thing is that you got to remember that when that helicopter I'm holding has a 1-horsepower engine and is capable of developing an amazing amount of power and torque. And it really isn't a toy. It's maybe an adult toy, but it's really something you want to run around somewhere else.
No, I can clearly see that. All right. Hold tight, Dr. Taylor. Dr. Albert Taylor is my guest from NASA. Listen, here's what you should do. Get hold of webmaster@artbell.com. That's his email address. Webmaster@artbell.com. So if you're having trouble, tell them what platform you're using. We live in a different day and age, not just computers anymore, but iPads, iPhones, various cell phones, all kinds of different platforms. So maybe your platform is not seeing things the way mine is. I don't know of any other way to put it. I'm not sure why you're having trouble. I certainly don't have trouble here, but I'm getting enough of these messages that obviously something's going on. So send a message off to webmaster@artbell.com and tell them what you're using and why you had trouble, and we'll go from there and try and figure this out, because obviously we need to. Albert, welcome back.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is tell my my board op, Evan, back there in Washington, D.C., to clear the lines. What we're going to do is open the lines and sort of start a slow but sure conversation with the audience and allow them to call in, if that's okay with you, Albert.
Sounds great. It's one of my favorite things to do.
All right, good. And your questions can be anywhere in what we've talked about, from soul traveling to leaving your body to his robots, what he's found, whether whatever. Any of this is fair game. And the number is 855-REAL-UFO. That's a toll-free number, 855-REAL-UFO, or 855-732-5836. Now, where were we? I guess we left off at the helicopter. Mm-hmm. And again, you must have expended a tremendous amount of money to build these sorts of things. It really must have been very costly, huh?
One of the things I've learned. I'm sorry for laughing.
What's so funny?
Well, one of the things I've learned, Art, is that you don't count the dollars when you do something like this, because you will always say, "I could have done this, I could have done that." You never ever do that. So I don't do that. I try to accomplish the task at hand in a reasonable manner, and I think the fact that I build stuff out of things that people throw away is a huge cost savings.
It is, but I don't see a VCR in that helicopter. Maybe there is one somewhere.
Well, the thing about it is, this is more than just a hobby to me. This is something to me, it's a form of self-discovery, and all these little pieces of this puzzle that I call, the nature of human consciousness, those things I can't think of anything more important than that. And the closer I've gotten to discovering what the nature of human consciousness is, the more exciting and cost effective I think it becomes. I think that if I can discover something profound about our existence, like the relationship between astral substance and dark matter, for instance. If I can discover something like that, and I've spent a few pennies on a helicopter and a few other things to something that's going to change the nature of consciousness globally, then it was money well spent.
All right. Well, I'm going to frustrate the hell out of everybody now, because the last photograph in the series of photographs, which are really cool ones, is really an awesome picture. And folks, what it is a picture of a UFO. And I don't know where this was taken. Well, actually, I have an idea, because I've seen those windmills before. Mm-hmm. In California, I would guess. Probably up near the Bay Area somewhere. That's
definitely.
Yes.
Now let me give you a little back history on that a little bit, so you see how come I'm so impressed with it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, basically, I received that from an individual that I've known probably since I was 14 years old. He is the reason that I joined the United States Air Force. Yeah, if it hadn't been him, I went down there to the recruiter with him for him to join, and I ended up joining. That particular thing changed my life, as I ended up being a crew chief on the U-2. He and I, when I got out of the Air Force, we worked together on the B-1B at Rockwell International, which is a defunct company now. It's gone. And I've known this individual for a very, very long time. He has been an aerospace engineer like myself. And so earlier this year, I was contacted by this individual, and he stated that he and his wife were on their way to San Francisco, and it's up there by where I think the I-5 goes towards San Francisco, and another highway goes towards Stockton.
Right.
Right. So where he was driving, and all of a sudden, he said he couldn't believe it. He was shocked, and he saw that vehicle in the air moving slowly across the windmills, the power windmill area out there. And if anybody's ever driven out there, it's a huge, huge farm of gigantic windmills that generate power for the local areas. Mm-hmm. He said he pulled over to the side of the road and snapped that picture. So and I've seen a lot of UFO pictures, as have you, and usually they're very old, or they're getting very old, and there aren't a lot of new things that you see. And because this was only a few months old, like earlier this year, and I've known this individual from 15 years old, it adds a lot of credibility.
It's so totally a saucer. It's a saucer.
Adds a lot of credibility. He was a crew chief on the B-52. So I know he knows aerospace. There's no doubt in my mind. He was also responsible for some programs on the B-1. So I know he wouldn't jump to conclusion when seeing something like that, or testifying as he has and shared with me about what he saw. So he and his wife couldn't believe that the people kept going. I guess when you're on the freeway, you don't look up in the sky as often. He couldn't believe that people kept going, and he said it didn't make any sound. It moved slowly over the windmills and eventually into the clouds and accelerated and moved away. Now, what I think is interesting about this is that, first of all, that it's current, that it happened in California, which is not too far from where I am, and that it happened not too far from Vandenberg, because Vandenberg Air Force Base is up that way, and it happened around a power source, something generating power. So all of that together is something, and that's why I'm going to use the Condor to retrace the steps, the flight pattern of the UFO. And if you look at it, I blew that picture up. It's quite amazing. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Matter of fact, when I have shown it to very few people, and that means very few, I can count them on two fingers, I don't have to tell them what it is. All you got to do is look at it.
No, of course not.
So
it is what it is. Yeah.
It is
okay,
what it is.
All right. That's going to get people really frantic trying to get to the right place on the website. But it is a recent saucer photograph, and it's framed by these wind jennies, these monster wind jennies in California. So you can decide its size for yourself. Of course, you can't know exactly the distance from that object, but
it helps.
It's a very good photograph. You are on the air with Dr. Albert Taylor. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Art. Mega Roswell.
Thank you.
It's glad to have you back on. I just wanted to ask, in all the astral travels that you did, or out of these experiences, did you ever have a encounter with your mother ever again?
Yes. Yes, I have. Several times. I don't really want to go into too much detail of that. Extremely emotional. But yes, and I was wondering if that was going to happen because I have out-of-body experiences, and it definitely did. But it helped me with the healing process.
Awesome. Totally awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Let me ask this. Can you... it's a sensitive question. I mean, if you wanted to, are you now to the point, Dr. Taylor, where you can actually cause yourself to go to a specific purpose? In other words, if you want to meet your mother, you can somehow do it.
Well, one of the things I learned a long time ago is that I can go anywhere or interact with almost anyone if I have an emotional connection with them. So because of my connection with my mother, definitely to go visit the Bahamas, probably not, because those are things you don't care about unless you have some emotional connection. So definitely with my deceased loved ones, they came to me first. I didn't believe in them. They came to me first, but definitely capable of interacting with the deceased loved ones. And it's extremely
Yes, I would like to ask this, Dr. Taylor. What do you now understand about the nature of death?
Well, that's I've been thinking about this a long time, and and we've discussed this on many occasions. And as the more I look into it, the more experiences I have astrally or out of body, the more questions I have. One of the things that I truly have discovered and accept and understand is that we go on forever. We have existed long before this planet existed, and we will exist long thereafter. And you got to think about this, is that in the paranormal community and metaphysical communities, generally, when I first started looking into this and trying to discover what was happening to me, most people were only looking into the last 100 to 200 to 500 years of human existence, trying to answer the question of what is the paranormal and what are ghosts. And that didn't make any sense to me. It didn't make any sense to me because of the nature of the planet Earth. The planet Earth has been here for 3.5 billion years, approximately.
Long time.
The universe has been here for 13.5 billion years, approximately. Now, what's interesting is that before Earth, little things like, for instance, gold. Gold, everybody has gold, but do you ever think about where gold comes from? Gold was not made on Earth. It didn't originate in Earth. It was created in the last dying thralls of an exploding star, a star that went supernova. So before Earth was here, there were molecules that ended up forming the Earth, and then eventually the scientists talk about amino acids that pooled in a pool somewhere that collided into each other, and eventually somehow the spark of life started and then evolved to eventually humanoid people like us. But you got to think about that. Okay, that's one physical, mechanical aspect of human innate in the nature of human existence. But what if we exist outside of the body through the out-of-body experiences and all the near-death testimonials, and because of the reincarnational experiences, memories that I eventually started having too. So if we existed prior to us being here now, and the Earth didn't exist until it formed 3.5 billion years ago, then we existed a lot longer than that, and we came to this planet to inherit or to influence or to be incorporated or to, what is the word I'm trying to merge with a humanoid organism of some sort, to have an earthly experience here of approximately 80 years and then move on. So if we've existed before the Earth, then why did we come here, and what is really going on during the Earth life experience?
All right. Let me ask this. I can't think of any other way to put it. With your understanding of the nature of death or life after death or an existence after death, would you agree or not that we continue to have a contemporary consciousness after death?
Definitely. And the reason for that is not only from my personal experiences as far as out-of-body experiences, but in my paranormal investigative experiences where I can get something that is non-physical to interact with me and actually answer questions. So definitely we do. At what state we do, I'm really puzzled and trying to understand, because sometimes when you collect EVPs and you've heard them, they make no sense. It sounds like,
That's right, gibberish.
Gibberish. But
okay, go ahead, finish.
But there are some rare occasions where you collect an EVP that is not played like a recording, but is actually responding to a question that you ask, and that right there is enough, should be enough, to make you curious about what is going to happen to you after you pass, and will you be able to do that?
I agree. The people who do EVPs all the time say it's very rare. A contemporary response, and perhaps even a conversation, is extremely rare, but it does happen. All right, back to the phones. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hi.
Hello, Art.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Yeah, this is Bill in the high desert in Southern California, and I have a question for Dr. Taylor. Taylor, please.
Hi, Bill. Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Taylor, I think I talked to you in the past when you're on our show before. And I have a question about a statement you made. You talked about you talked about ions giving you a cold feeling in one of your tests. And the thing is, negative ion generators are quite popular as air purifiers. They purify the air down to point-something microns. And I have them in every room in my house, but I don't get any cold feeling out of them. Are they just negative ions, or do they? I don't think ions are positive, are they?
Well, there are negative and positive ions, and that's still research that we're still conducting because we have to have an individual set up a situation and then maybe use something like a Van de Graaff generator or something like that to try to stir up the ions in the area and see which ions would affect the individual. So, but this is just a report that I've gotten from people that are talking about that, is because what I notice is that when a person on my team has said they feel cold, and when I use the laser temperature sensor, there's no physical temperature difference. So that's where we have to look into other types of molecules, ions, and things like that are in our atmosphere that may be affected by the paranormal occurrence, and then see if that has anything to do with it. So it's still an area of study, and we're still trying to figure it out and understand it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wondered about that because I haven't felt any coldness out of my ion generators, and I'm thinking, damn, the ghosts are staying away from me, or whatever.
Now, the thing about Well, I just want to address one more thing. The thing about feeling cold, none of these little indicators or red flags happen all the time in every situation. You may have a situation where the feeling of cold exists, and then it may never happen again. So it's just like if I'm coming into a room, I may not touch the same object every time. I may do different things, and that's what you got to think about happens in the paranormal. It's not general. A lot of times they're not going to be repeating the same things that they repeat over and over again.
Yeah, I understand. It doesn't have to be negative ions generating the cold. It could be other things, too.
Right,
I really
exactly.
appreciate your show. I liked you before. I like you now, and I'm glad you're back on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend. Take care. And when I say, look, when I say cold, I mean the most profound kind of you can't get rid of it with hot water pouring over your head kind of cold. It was unbelievable. I've never felt anything like that in my whole life. And it didn't matter what I did. There was no way to get warm. It was paranormal. It was so overwhelming. Unless it can be explained in some kind of shock or something, I'm telling you, it was just astounding. All right,
well,
let's
think of one thing, Art. Think about this. It was designed to get your attention. If you could get in the shower and then warm up, it would be no big deal. You'd forget all about it. But the fact that it didn't happen that way, it was designed to get your attention, and now you're still talking about it.
Yeah, well, it sure as heck got my attention. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, hello.
Yeah, Art, Mega Roswell's. You've
Thank you.
been a companion in my truck for a really long time, and it's good to hear you again.
Hey, I'm curious, how did you find us here on XM? Sirius XM.
Well, I first heard you obviously on AM radio, and then I was one of the first to get an XM radio. And the reason why I chose that was that I could hear you without searching channels once I drove away from the signal.
Yep, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It is. It's amazing.
All right, anyway, go ahead. I just was curious.
Yeah, I have a pretty basic, simple question. I like tinkering with electronics, not that I'm really good at it, but I can fiddle with things till I blow something up. A lot of times when there's a haunting site, you hear people talking about the camera's battery went dead and circumstances like that. Obviously, that doesn't affect your robots.
Or does it? That's a very good question.
It hasn't yet. It could, but it hasn't yet.
So possibly there's something about the power source or the design of your robots that is not affected as the way a camera would be.
Well, like I said just a few minutes ago, not everything happens every time. So because I would get battery failures in one particular investigation, I could come back the next day and it wouldn't happen. So, so far, because I have two power sources, it has a battery and it also charges via solar panel. So far, the two of those have kept it, the charge at peak. But you never know. It could happen.
All right. Thank you very much. You know, a lot of times in paranormal stories that we've seen, there are reports of very large electromagnetic fields associated with an appearance or with a happening of some kind or another. And one can imagine that it would affect batteries or things electronic. So I would think that would be a concern. Have you had any instances where it did affect your robots?
No, not so far. I've had it affect the cameras, my EMF meters, things like that. But to date, I have never had a robot fail during an investigation so far. One of the things that I do is, like I said, my camera doesn't have a backup power source, and my robots do. So I don't know. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen. I can just say that I don't worry about it because 8 out of 10 times it hasn't happened. So it's not something I would think that has a high probability of occurring.
You know, it's a good thing that you put these photographs up here because if you had described what you have in photographs up here, frankly, I wouldn't have believed you. You know, I mean, these are just amazing. You're on the air with Dr. Albert Taylor. Hello. Hello.
Seeing is believing, Art.
Yeah, we have someone on the line. They're not talking. Hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
We hear you.
All right. Mine's George, and I had an experience about 4 years ago, this past September 23rd. I had a heart attack, and luckily I lived 9 minutes from one of the two top heart hospitals in the United States. They took me straight there, and I had a 96% blockage, and I remember being on the gurney, going to the operating room to operate, and that's the last I remember there until I remember all of a sudden it going from a darkness to almost like the sun coming up in the morning, getting bright white and just continually getting white. And then I saw these like oblong white cylindrical deals that were like standing up, and I heard three voices. And I distinctively knew all three voices. One was my father, who died in 1985, my adoptive father that raised me. I was adopted when I was 1.5 years old, so he was the only father I knew. The second voice I heard was the minister from the Christian church where I grew up, that we were family friends with. He had died 3 years prior to that. The other voice I heard was a guy who lived in California who was like my best friend, and most people thought we were brothers, who had killed himself a year before that. And they all were telling me, it's not your time, we're fine, stay, your family needs you.
Wow.
And the next thing I knew was, it was the next day, and I was waking up in the hospital in my room. And I don't know how to accept that.
Well,
I would say face value.
I don't know where these voices came from, but like I said, I distinctively knew all three voices.
I would just accept it at face value. It is what it was. Those people were there. That's remarkable.
Well,
and there are so many stories like that. It's just remarkable.
Oh, it totally is. And the thing about, he said you're having trouble processing it. One of the things I want to tell you and share with you is that, first of all, realize that you are not alone. This isn't just happened to you, so you're in no way a victim or anything negative in any way, shape, or form. There is like I mentioned earlier, 8 million people in the United States alone who have had near-death experiences, and throughout every state there are groups of people who band together to support each other because they have no one else to talk to. No one else can understand or realize exactly what you've seen and what you've experienced and the lasting emotional impact that it's had on you. So one of the things I do suggest is that if you're open to it, is to seek out one of these groups. The International Association of Near-Death Studies, IANDS, is one of them. There are probably others. To seek out one of these groups and share your story, and what will happen is, as you listen to the stories of the other individuals who had experiences, they will start filling in the pieces of the puzzle to your own story and your own experience. So that is one of the things I think is very, very important, is to seek some type of a support group.
All right, we're going to take a break here. I think it would change your life so profoundly to have such an experience. And your life from that moment on, once you had seen the other side, once you really knew that the other side was real, there would be such a profound change in the way you would live your life. It's hard, but he's working on it, so it's not like we don't hear you. Those of you complaining, it's hard to find Dr. Taylor, it's hard to find the photographs. Trust me, we feel you. We're working on it. Dr. Taylor, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
A lot of people want to talk to you. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, sir. Out of curiosity, where are you?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto, Canada. And how did you find us?
Well, I listened to your show before Dark Matter, and
Okay.
George mentioned that you were actually having a new show on, so I went to your website, and I found out that you were on Sirius XM, and I signed up.
Thank you, George. All right. So what do you have for Dr. Taylor?
I have two questions, actually. The first one is regarding those robots that he's building.
Mm-hmm.
And
to make all these measurements for like paranormal activity, Bigfoot, so forth and so on, and the Mars rover. All these robots, they're great. They make measurements, but I think you're missing out on the human factor, like subjective versus objective observations. Because you mentioned that when you went into the room, you had cramps or Art's experience with the coldness. You don't get that from a robot. You don't get that from the measurements themselves. So do you work in conjunction with the robots, or you just rely on the robots for the measurements?
Well, the robots are just another tool. So definitely, I have a team of humans, organics, carbon life forms that basically they do the investigation to their limitations, and then beyond the limitations, the robots can take over.
All right, look, I've got something I want to add here. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, here it is. Look, it may well be that if there had been a robot anywhere near me in my house when I experienced all of this, the robot may not have detected, or it may have detected something. I don't know. But I know that I have to consider it within reason, that I was totally in some state of shock that I was unable to recover from no matter what. And it was not paranormal at all. I absolutely consider that. So for that reason, I can see why having both, as you put it, carbon-based life forms and robots present is really a gigantic advantage.
Well, think about it, Art. If you're going to go, let's say, visit Egypt, okay, you're going to take as many cameras and recording devices as you possibly can to try to capture the moment, because you don't know when you'll be back. That's the same thing with the paranormal. If you don't do that, the chances of you retrieving data becomes less and less and less, and can even become a wasted trip. So to try to avoid that, what I notice is that we humans are limited, and that there was a big window of time that I wanted to collect data during that I wasn't capable of, that the added tool of an autonomous robot, and autonomous is important because I may be asleep and it may need to act on its own. The incorporation of an autonomous robot opened that time on station to 24 hours, so I have 24 hours of recording where I may have only had 4 hours.
Oh, no, it so makes sense. Here's a message that comes from the wormhole. Dr. Taylor, if your Bigfoot robot falls over or has a problem in the forest, does it send out a radio distress locator signal, or does it just start screaming, Dr. Taylor, help?
Well, first of all, it's not bipedal. It doesn't walk on two legs. It has a type of tripod gear sort setup. So it can't tip over, and even if it tips over, you can flip it completely upside down and it can still run upside down. So the thing about you design the bot to survive the environment, and you try to take into consideration everything it could possibly run into, and you can only go so far, but you try to design that into it. And so far, the bot is capable of climbing over fallen trees in case it runs up on that. If it runs into shallow ponds, it's suspended high enough above the ground that the electronics doesn't get wet, and it's waterproof, so it's capable of enduring rainstorms and things like that. So these are the things that I've incorporated into the design, that all my robots, they all can't do the same job. So some of them, I have no other robot that will be capable of doing that except for the one that I'm working on now. The other robots are like indoor robots or something like that. So hopefully I will, as an engineer, which I think if it's good enough for NASA, it might be good enough for paranormal investigation. Hopefully, as an engineer, I've thought about a lot of things, and I've designed it to the best of my ability to perform an outstanding job.
You know what? Your robots are so good that I think the defense intelligence people are liable to come back and see you again, so then you'll be full circle, huh?
I don't mind being involved in the Department of Defense to some degree. I left that area because I didn't want to be involved in the weapons aspect of things. But as far as information, I'm more than happy to get involved in that based on my past experience and my current experience.
Okay. Hello there. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor.
Hello, Art. Hello, Dr. Taylor. Art, first, it is good to have you back. I am driving late at night out here in the North Dakota Bakken oil fields, and it definitely helps keep me awake.
Wow. So are you in a truck hauling oil?
I've done multiple things out here. I've hauled fluids. Now I actually just haul tools out to the rig sites and, back and forth between rig sites and vendors.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yes.
They're saying that North Dakota oil may be as big as what's in, Saudi Arabia. Is that true?
Well, what I keep reading in the local papers are that it just keeps on coming. As a matter of fact, a little segue, I was up in Canada here a few weeks ago, and I talked to an oil guy who was up there in the Edmonton oil fields that they're, talking about the oil sands. And he says they've got 150 years worth of oil up there too. And I don't know if he meant worldwide demand or what, but there is a tremendous amount of oil. And I guess if I could plug the oil field out here, there are a lot of jobs. They pay well, and I know the country is hurting. It's nothing to come out here and make $60,000 to $100,000, but you have to have your housing in place.
Gotcha.
So,
all right. I don't want to take Dr. Taylor's time, but we'll talk more about that. Do you have a question for me?
Well, Dr. Taylor, you mentioned earlier when you mentioned the out-of-body experience, it kind of reminded me of when I was a teenager. My uncle was starting to get into, I think he called it ESP. And I just remember a story he had mentioned one time where he was sitting, relaxing, trying to get into, I suppose, this meditative state you were speaking of. And he said he was home alone, sitting in his chair, and he was thinking, geez, I would like to be in bed. And so he got up out of his chair and walked into his bedroom and then got the hell scared out of him because he said he saw himself laying in bed.
Right. And
all of a sudden this figure, and it shocked him. And all of a sudden his figure rose out of bed, and he said it just like somebody hit him with a full body slam. And it surprised him. But I just wanted your comments on that, just because that was so many years ago, and you bringing it up just kind of reminded me of him describing that. And I don't know if he pursued it any further after that. But anyhow, I just really relate that story to you and let you comment on that.
Well, that's an awesome story, and it's I hate to use the term atypical, but a lot of people, when I mentioned earlier, even through the death process and the out-of-body experience process, once you find yourself out of your body, it doesn't feel all that abnormal. As a matter of fact, it feels very normal. So the fact that he rose from his body and was walking around thinking that he was physical makes a lot of good sense, because you don't know until you try to do something that the physical body can't do, like fly or move through a wall or something like that. So there's been, and that's a wonderful indication that you're having out-of-body experiences. I tell people, if you wake up twice, if you wake up once and you think you're awake and then you realize you weren't and you wake up again, that's a great indication that you're capable of having out-of-body experiences, and you should explore it to the fullest.
So, Dr. Taylor, after I pass, my back is going to be better.
Yeah, you know what? Your back is going to be, I'd say, better than better. It's going to be non-existent. You're not going to have any back problems.
I'm not sure I was striving for non-existent. And that brings up it brings up a good point. When you die, like you're going to know the answer to all this, but I want to ask at least. As we're living now, we have a sense of our body, and I'm not speaking of my bad back now, but we have a sense of ourselves, the physical sense of ourselves. So is that gone right away, or does it sort of fade away after one passes, or do you immediately go to a mental existence only?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about that is that everyone I've ever spoken to, even the elderly that have had near-death experiences, and even the young, I've heard children talk about their near-death experiences, is the one thing that it seems to be common is that there is a mid-state of aging, maybe around 30 to 40, where we always stay, no matter what your physical condition is. And what I mean by that is if you, let's say you had a physical abnormality that caused you to be very aware of it 100% of the time while you were awake. Well, when you're laying down in your bed and you're asleep or half asleep, all that seems to slip away, and that state of consciousness that you're aware of, because I used to talk to my mom about this because she was a 90. She said, I'm 90, but I feel like I'm in my 40s. Well, that state is permanent. There seems to be fairly permanent in paranormal experiences given with out-of-body experiences and with the people who've transitioned and passed on. And even when you have parting visions where you see a deceased loved one, generally they're in the best health of their life. They look younger, and they may have been in a wheelchair or something like that, but they've appeared to you on how they perceive themselves. So you don't get so damaged in life where you perceive yourself to be this physically crippled person. That doesn't stay with you. What stays with you is that around that 40-year-old kind of the best time of your life, where you were the best that you ever were in. Okay,
well, if that is the case, then if you appear to a mere mortal, do you appear to be younger. and healthier, yes. or do you appear still in the wheelchair for their recognition? I mean, if somebody is suddenly 30 years old who is 90, you might not even recognize them.
From all the reports that I've had, not one person, and there may be somebody out there because it's not absolute, but I'd say 98% of the reports that I've gotten have talked about a person being younger. They were no longer limped. They no longer were in a wheelchair. They were no longer handicapped. They didn't take that physical abnormality to the other side with them.
Okay. All right. That answers that. And you're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hi.
Oh, Art?
Yes.
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm a long-time listener from back when you were on the AM radio. I'm a truck driver. Glad to have you back on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You came on at a good time, too, because my Giants are 4-0-4, so I couldn't listen to Sports Center anymore. So, great timing. I got a quick question for Mr. Taylor.
Okay, it's going to have to be because we don't have a very good connection here. You're kind of cutting out, but go ahead.
Okay. My question is it possible for paranormal, let's say, a ghost or a demonic entity to enter your body when he's astroplaning?
You got it?
I got it. He said, is it possible for something demonic to occupy your or affect your astral body or your body while you're out of body?
Okay.
And this is the thing that I realized is that only in my school, Catholic school, and in the physical world did I have something that even referenced demonic. So far, and if it existed, and if I encountered it, I would report it because it's not about what I want, it's about what I've experienced. So far, since I've figured out what is going on and I've actively pursued it and had numerous out-of-body experiences, I have never encountered something that I would call demonic. I've encountered negative entities that will play games with you, but nothing that you would call demonic because that's kind of a religious belief system term, but I have not encountered anything that is like that.
In your view, is there a heaven? Is there a hell?
Heaven, if you want to call it heaven, I'd say yes, meaning there is a place where we go that is better than this, that is we return to, that is amazing, that we will see deceased relatives, that type of thing. If you want to call that heaven, yes, there is a location like that.
Where dogs and cats get along, and congressmen agree on everything, and
well, the dogs and cats do, but the congressmen don't.
Yes.
Hippos and lions get along, but the congressmen don't. Sorry.
You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
Hey, thanks, Art. Always a pleasure. Dr. Taylor, I'm going to try and phrase this right, because it's a question that's been bugging me. I think you can handle. Now, I'm a person who can't say that I can't say, oh, on such and such a day I experienced an out-of-body experience, and here's what happened. I also won't tell you that I've never had one. I think sometimes the boundary between dreaming and an out-of-body experience may be a little bit fuzzy. That being said, here's my question. With respect to lucidity, I have had the experience, and it bugs the heck out of me, hundreds, thousands of times where I come to the point of lucidity, and I'm able to have that control for what's probably a split second, but seems like a minute or two, and then all of a sudden it disappears, and I wake up. I can't maintain that control. Is there something wrong with me, or what is it that I'm experiencing?
Okay, first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. What happens during that process, especially the more lucid you are, the more excited you get, because it's an exciting thing, and that's hard to suppress. Excitement can bring you out of it. The intense emotions, period, even fear, can bring you out of the experience. So what is needed, or I think that you need, I suggest, is the more you experience it, it still becomes exciting, but you have more control over your emotions and your body and are allowed to experience the phenomena longer. So don't let it discourage you. The fact that you even get close is an awesome thing. It just takes practice to calm down the body so that you can last longer.
But the only thing I would question is this has happened to me literally hundreds of times. You would think I'd be getting better at it. Is it that I'm not focusing on that?
Well, I don't know exactly what you've studied as far as improving on yourself and your techniques, but if you haven't done anything, you can't really expect any kind of different result. So it's important to learn about what other people have done prior to. You don't have to reinvent the wheel on this. There's a lot of people who have had experiences. I just happen to be one of them. So learn what they do, incorporate some of that into your particular lifestyle and what you do, and then see how that improves your situation. If you do nothing, it'll repeat the same way, but if you learn, you'll have better experiences.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Thank you. And that makes good sense to me. In other words, take advantage of the years of investigation that others have done. And I guess one good way to do that, book plug, would be to get Soul Traveler, huh? Definitely.
That's one way. What I found is no one particular way works for everyone. So it's important, I believe, to experiment and look into different types of techniques until you find something that works for you or that you can modify that works for you.
All right. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
Hello, Art?
Yes, sir.
Hey, how are you? How you doing, Dr. Taylor?
I'm doing great, thank you.
My question is about your robots if they ever go looking for Bigfoot. And I'm just curious, if say you have a robot and it comes across Bigfoot, like the real thing, and Bigfoot gets spooked and it comes up and it just comes up to the robot and destroys it because it's scared. Is there any way that, does it transmit video back to you and record audio? Is there any way that, that it would capture that event? Or if that happens, there's just no chance that, that would ever be known?
Well, that's a good question, but you got to remember, at least you don't have to remember, but I'm influenced by my experience in the space program. When we send probes to different locations, they always send back data, telemetry of some sort. So that's kind of where I don't put all my eggs in one basket and hope I recover the robot and spend hours and hours of it running and investigating and end up with zero. So everything that it is videotaping or photographing, I get back to a base station in real time.
Okay, so like it would then capture a Bigfoot attack then.
Yes. And that's what I was sharing with Art earlier, is even if it gets destroyed, it's going to be the best 30 seconds you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, because I don't know if you saw, there's a picture on the website of like a Bigfoot face, and it's incredible.
Right. Yeah, I figure if the vehicle does get demolished from another type of animal, I still will know why it happened and have captured some data.
Because the final frames, the final frames might be a giant foot coming down on it, and that might be the end. But right.
The death throes of my robot experience. Yeah.
All right, hold tight, Doctor. We're going to take a break here. Fallen trees. I'm trying to visualize this, and I can't.
Well, it's hard to describe it, but I'll try. It has, let's see, the wheels assembly. Okay, it's a hub assembly that turns on. 2 wheels turn on an axis, and the wheels have telescoping spikes that stick out of them that go around in 360 degrees. Each one of the spikes can recoil when it approaches an object to a certain extent, to maybe 4 or 5 inches. So what that does is imagine your fingers, spread out your fingers. And if your fingers come up on a broomstick, that one finger that hits the broomstick is going to retract while the other fingers continue to move over the broomstick. And then that finger is going to extend again. So as it comes in, and as this is rotating, so we have a bunch of retractable fingers on a rotating wheel that when it comes up to, let's say, a fallen log or tree, the parts that touch the tree limb will retract, creating some kind of almost like a cup around the tree. And as it keeps driving, the remaining wheels will be on either side of the tree and push the robot over it. And then the wheels that are touching the tree, once they stop touching the tree, will extend again back to a circular shape. That's the best way I can describe it.
All right. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Where are you? I'm curious.
I am just outside of Detroit, Michigan.
Okay. Unless I ask, people never tell me. Okay, very good. Go ahead.
I'm on the road quite often, so it helps me stay awake at night.
Well, we're happy to serve.
My question is, in regards to communicating with those that have passed on, it's hard for me to grasp the how it happens. Is it some people use a spirit box or they get EVPs from a little machine? Other people can claim they can hear those that have passed on through audio, through their ears. But I cannot understand how this happens when, as a human being, we listen with our ears and speak with our vocal cords. Mm-hmm. How is this possible?
Okay. Well, one of the things, I'm not into the spirit box that comes up with slogans and words and phrases that it's supposed to be generated by an anomaly of some sort. I'm very skeptical about that one. What I found is that the easiest way to collect EVPs, be it passive or interactive, is something very, very simple, and that would be an analog tape recorder. Now, an analog tape recorder that uses the tape of chromium oxide tape, which is really common. We don't understand how the voice gets imprinted on the chromium oxide tape, but we know that it has nothing to do with the air moving sound waves or sound, like when you speak right now, you're moving air through your lungs, which is creating sound. We know that it's placed on the chromium oxide tape, and that is not occurring. So,
Dr. Taylor, let me stop you and tell you something. The people that I deal with that do EVPs are very good. They're nonprofit, older people who really do care about this work, and they have found early on they thought it had to be tape. It had to be a conventional tape machine. But they really have found that digital does work. And thank goodness, because digital is very clear compared to.
Yes. I have used digital recorders. to me, and this is just me, the sound that I've gotten from analog tape recorders has been a little easier to figure out versus the digital ones. So, yes, I've used both, but I have been able to understand what I've collected a little better on the chromium oxide analog tape recorders.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Have you done a lot of work in this area?
I'd say extensive. You mean as far as the actual mechanics of the tape or the...
Well, in EVP.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Matter of fact, I remember playing some EVPs on a show you and I did where you said I had some of the best EVPs you've ever heard. So
Right.
That, definitely.
But, I mean, this has been an ongoing adventure with you.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Matter of fact, my robots, every time I go out on an investigation, that's one of the functions they perform. So they're performing multiple tasks at the same time, digital photography, stills, audio, that type of thing. So every time I go on an investigation, I come back with recordings, EVPs of some sort that the robots or my investigators have collected.
Remarkable. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Hi.
Yes, this is Everett from Tennessee.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. First, I'd like to talk to you for a minute, for a second or two, about the dark and light thing, if you'd like to talk about that.
I'm willing to talk about it. I don't know how much light I can shed.
What I'm about to tell you is I can't speak on the dark part much, but I can speak a little bit about the light thing. As a young kid, I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, I don't know, something like that, I would have these things that Dr. Taylor's talking about, these out-of-body experiences, or it started out as like I'd wake up, I'd be asleep, and I'd wake up, and I couldn't move or speak or anything like that. It started out that way, you know, and it was very scary. I'd scream or holler for help, and nobody could help me because I couldn't literally scream. But
just like Dr. Taylor.
Right.
Exactly. Okay, I had hundreds of them when I was younger, but I guess when I was about 10 or 12 years old, I got comfortable with it over the years, over them 4 or 5 years there. And one night I went to bed, and I was kind of experimenting. I was literally going to try to see God. That's what I was wanting to do. Mm-hmm. So I had one of these experiences, just one of these outer bodies experiences. To me, they're more like a spiritual experience. And I remember from that point, when I went into that stage where I couldn't move this, that, and the other, and I got to the point where I could go out of my body, like Dr. Taylor was talking about. And I remember just going to a place where there was just pure energy and light. At the time, I didn't know what it was. I was so young. I was, like I said, 10, 12 years old. I didn't really know what it was. But I went to a place where it was just pure light and energy. And I know I was concentrated on trying to find, see who God was and what God looked like. So as far as going towards the light and dark, I was just probably going towards the light.
You know what? I think that in the end, I'm going to get so confused, I'm going to go to the gray area.
Well, to me, I really truly believe I was in the presence of God to this day. I really felt like that. And I was there for a little bit. I could feel the stuff. I could feel the energy. It was like energy or light. I can't say it was light or I can't say it was energy. It was like, it was like energy and light. That's the best way I can describe it.
Okay. Well, I interviewed a young lady who gave me a very long and detailed, years ago, description of going to the other side, and it was filled with different rooms, some with terrifying things, some with wonderful things. I remember that very, very vividly. Anyway, as I said, I think, Dr. Taylor, I'm going to end up just walking into the gray area. I don't know what to do.
Well, I think, first of all, I have to say congratulations to that gentleman for having the experience, because a lot of people wish they had that experience, and he's had one. Right. And the way it affects you is profound. This is the thing that I try to suggest to people when you're going to have encounters with something on the other side via the out-of-body experience, is try to suspend your judgments and your belief system and the things that you think you expect to see, because that can contaminate the entire experience where you won't have a really pure experience. So just don't try to guess. Don't try to predict or anything like that, and just observe what's happening and soak all that in, and you'll find that you're going to get an experience that's going to be beyond anything anybody has ever told you.
That's good advice. All right, you're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Art. Good morning.
Good morning.
First, I'd like to say to Keith, the website's great. I went to Art's Parts earlier and have a coffee mug that should be here on Friday.
All right. Be sure it has my signature on it. Remember that.
Yes, sir. You guys have almost covered both of the questions, and the caller just before was touching all around it. My first
then, goodbye. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
My first question was the age deal. We won't even go there. The second one, there's a scripture in Corinthians about when you're absent from the body, you're present with the Lord, with God. And he was touching on that, and I wanted to get Dr. Taylor's thoughts on that as well.
Okay.
Well, one of the things I don't do is I don't comment on somebody's religion or belief system, but I can tell you this. No matter what you believe, and hopefully you believe in something, it is a spiritual experience. It's fun and games in the beginning, and it's fun even after the beginning, but it all leads to spiritual awakening of the individual having the experience. And so far, and everyone that myself included, and everyone I've talked to all over the world, it's definitely improved their lives and has been a benefit to their lives. So that's what I can share with you.
All right. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
Oh, Art and Dr. Taylor, this is Rusty from Michigan.
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Yeah, Dr. Taylor, I bought your book, I guess it was 5 years ago, something like that, and you kind of have some steps outlined in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I like can astro travel, on its own, but I can't do it at will. And, man, I've tried, and I got so sick of trying, I almost stopped.
Yeah, I understand.
And I just can't seem to get there.
You have an astral flat tire.
Yes.
Well, let me share some things that can slow you down, so to speak. If you have a lot of stress in your life or stressful job, that can do it. Stressful home life, that can do it. A lot of situations in your life that cause anger, that can do it. So sometimes, and because the key to having an altered state of consciousness or altered state experience, because that's what this is relaxation. The body harbors or stores tension from previous experiences quite efficiently. That's why we have post-traumatic stress syndrome. A lot of people suffer through. So it takes practice. Instead of trying to accomplish the end result, which is having the out-of-body experience, practice on the relaxation and the takeoff part and get that really well-tuned, and then what comes after that will get a lot easier.
When you get there to the astral travel, now a lot of my problem I know is because I have a lot of physical pain. I have a disability, but do people get healed going there?
It has happened. I've known a woman that she was diagnosed with cancer and was told that she had about a year or two to live, and that was 15 years ago, and she's in remission. This is how
and she attributes it to astral travel?
She had a near-death experience.
A near-death, oh.
Which in a near-death experience is a form of out-of-body experience or astral travel. It is the same thing. One is controlled, one isn't. But this is the thing. Now think about this. Let me try to put it into a little tiny area that makes a lot of sense. Now, let's not think about the healing aspect. Let's think about the sick aspect of making you sick. We know we know that if you worry about something right now, your consciousness can cause ulcers, can cause your stomach to have ulcers.
Sure.
Your consciousness can damage your body. People who have during earthquakes, people because of the fear, not because of the physical danger, people because of the fear have had heart attacks.
Oh.
So we know that your consciousness can cause negative things. Well, why wouldn't your consciousness be able to cause positive things also, depending on your frame of mind? It has an effect on the body negatively when you worry. Wouldn't it have an effect? You think there would be some kind of effect on the positive side if you weren't worried and use positive energy. So that's kind of how you have to look at it. There's really a yin and a yang to this, but most people, if you're not aware of the positive, we all too often focus on the negative.
Totally makes sense to me. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello. Hello there. I know you're there.
Hello.
Hi.
Art?
Yes.
Caught me by surprise. Yeah, the question I had I think it's at least 3 or 4 out-of-body experiences when I was 18. That's 28 years ago. And your guest just mentioned stress could bring it on.
Well, actually, I think the opposite. Stress would probably prevent it.
Well, there are some cases. It depends on the situation. Stress can, like abuse, physical abuse, has been reported to launch people in out-of-body experiences, but stress can also prevent it from happening.
Yeah, I can see that. In other words, you'd want to escape, you'd want to be away, and that would be the will that would carry you. Colin?
Right.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, these particular experiences, I would be above my body, looking down on it, and I was so scared because I couldn't move my body at all. But I was looking down on it, and I think the fear is what kept on bringing me back down into my body, and I think if I would have been able to just relax and let go, I could have actually gone where I was supposed to go. Is that correct?
Definitely. And fear, think about how fear has served us as far as a species on this planet. Fear has had a vital and important part of our awareness because it saved our lives in a lot of cases. When we were wandering through the forests and jungles and you hear a twig snap behind you, that fear told you that it could be a predator and that you need to find some shelter or cover. Well, the fear has worked really fine for a long, long time, but now because we're in a different area and we're talking about spiritual and all that, the fear is still there, but it's not preventing or saving you from anything. It's kind of automatic. So now it's going to take a conscious effort on your part or anybody's part to overcome the fear because it happens before we can think. It usually kicks in before you can think rationally about something. That's why if there's a loud noise, cats usually jump up and run out of the room before they even know what's wrong. So that takes a conscious effort on your part and practice to overcome that natural instinct that fear has, that hair trigger, and to overcome it and suppress it. But I can tell you this, it definitely is possible, and the more you practice, the better you become at it.
Well, I hope I get another chance to, I used to listen to Christopher Cross Sailing right before I fell asleep, and that seemed to bring it on, and I'll just try that.
Mm-hmm.
But
whatever works.
Yeah, you caught me off guard. Like I said, I want to say Mega Roswell's, and it's a pleasure talking to you both.
Thank you very much, and take care. Let's go here and say hello. You're on with Dr. Taylor.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Art. Dr. Taylor, Mega Roswell's.
Hello.
Thank you.
Pretty good. My wife and I were listening, and when Dr. Taylor was talking about the out-of-body experience, his initial experience, I guess, with being paralyzed, seeing a figure in the room, can't move, and all that stuff. Both of us have had that exact same experience, and it really gave us both goosebumps. And now I'd like to explore more astral travel, and just want to know where a good starting off point would be.
Well, first of all, let me say congratulations because if you have experienced the paralysis, a lot of the hard part is done. And that's an indication that you're definitely capable of having experiences far beyond the body. So congratulations on that. Read up on it as much as you possibly can. Practice different relaxation techniques. Don't get stuck on any particular one. Find something that works for you. It may not work for your wife. Hers may be different, but find something that works for you.
Doctor, let's try this. If you're laying in bed and you feel that you're paralyzed, right now, tell everybody, what is the next step? What do you do once you realize you're paralyzed? Instead of panicking, like I know I would, what do you do next to actually exit your body?
Well, the first thing you have to do is take control of the experience. Because if you don't take control of the experience, you're going to be a passenger. And that means all kinds of weird stuff is going to happen. And up into including bouncing off the walls uncontrollably, which will scare you. So the first thing, everything you had, almost, I'd say 90% of everything that happens to you in the out-of-body experience is because you will it to happen. So if you want to be able to see, that's the first thing you want to do, is you want to be able to see your environment, the room. So you say, I want to see. And it sounds simple, but that's kind of how it works. Next thing you want to do is, if you're completely paralyzed past the vibration stage, the only thing that's waiting for you to do is make a command, because you're sitting there disconnected. All you have to do is give the command to lift off. So you want to say, I want to float upward, and you will begin to move upward. Anything you want to do, I want to walk on the ground or walk on the carpet, because it's not about if you think about touching things, you're commanding muscles, but this is all about consciousness. There's not muscles being commanded. This is about consciousness, so you have to think it into happening. And 90% of the time, the astral body, because that's what you're going to be in initially, will respond to your thoughts.
I think that would have helped a lot of people. Hi there, you're on the air with Dr. Taylor.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We do hear you, yes.
Definitely.
Yes, I've been listening now for a couple of weeks. I heard your guys' radio promo when I got my satellite radio, and you guys.
So you're kind of, I guess we could say you're a new Sirius XM listener.
I'm a new Sirius XM listener. I'm new to listening to these type of shows, period. I grew up in a really diverse child upbringing, I guess. My mom is a practicing pagan. My stepdad's practicing Native American beliefs, different things. I had one of these out-of-body experiences one time on a guided meditation that my mom brought me to, and it was, ever since then, it's always been stuck in my head. I have dreams about it. What it was is this lady, she started the guided meditation, and I walked down a long corridor, kind of like with full of doors, kind of. And at the end, there was a one door, and this door had light coming out from underneath of it. And when I got to this door, I went inside, and when I came inside, there was just a flat, like almost like an altar type thing with a book on it. And when I opened this book, it was my lives, kind of. And my question is when you were talking about like these spirits or whatever, when you leave this world, when you die or whatever, is there a way can someone be chosen to come back into this life in another form or even the same form?
It's a good question. Caller, I want to ask you. You said you saw a book with your lives. You mean previous lives?
Previous life, like I've had dreams of like ancient Egyptian times where I was like, it felt so real, like I was there when they were building the pyramids. Like I try to explain to people, like different times, like I don't know, like, and ever since then I've had, my dreams are so vivid with different time periods, and when I research it, they're almost, almost exactly realistic compared to what people theorize these time periods look like.
Oh, that's really cool. Dr. Taylor, what about it?
There's something called the Akashic Records, or Akashic Records, and a lot of people have reported going into a room, or through a doorway and finding a book with all kinds of information about your past lives and your future. Now, you got to think about this, is that it's really not a book. and there's really not a room, but that's the way it's designed so you can understand what's going on. So some people may view it as a screen, a television screen, where it replays their life over. Some people may understand it as a book, and it really doesn't matter because a rose by any other name still is the same. It's still
I want it on TV. I want 1080 and surround sound and the whole thing.
I'm sure, Art, with your lifestyle, you would have that.
I probably would. Hold on, Dr. Taylor. We're at a break point here.
Thank you, Art. And Dr. Taylor, I became a fan of yours since I heard an Art Bell program late last century.
Oh, wow. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
I think you said something like life without reincarnation is like a play with just one act. There's not enough time for character development. That was very
Yes. Wow, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I did say that.
Well, it sort of seems like the Earth is a free will school for junior creators, and by your beliefs, so you'll manifest. That's what I'm getting from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right, yeah, and the word ions, when you talked about that, the movement of these charged atoms and stuff or group, when people think of movement, they normally think of friction causing heat. Yet Art explained he felt cold. So how does this ion situation work with the ghostly manifestation where it actually cools the air, or his feeling of it?
Well, it's not a physical cooling, meaning the temperature doesn't drop. It's a sensation. Kind of like when you put hot sauce in your mouth. The hot sauce is not hot, but you break out in a sweat anyway. It's a reaction to it. So it doesn't mean that, there's a temperature difference. It means that that's how your body is trying to interpret this outside stimulus.
Okay. I wanted to also comment about your robotic search for Bigfoot. I don't know if it was Art or years ago I heard a Bigfoot researcher say something about wearing metal, and that Bigfoot Sasquatch has an inborn radar toward anything metal, so that might sort of hinder your success rate.
Well, I don't know that for sure. If that is something that is a fact, then I will discover that. But so far, I don't think anybody has been able to develop or document any kind of pattern that's reliable thus far. Otherwise, I think they probably would have found them by now. So that's something I'll take into consideration. But unless it manifests, I probably won't deal with it.
Well, the robot, though, is a superb idea. You're not going to know until you know, but anything that can stand watch without moving and then take pictures 360 degrees instantly has got a pretty good shot of finding something, better than a person out in the middle of the woods with a camera.
Well, we use it to explore the universe. I don't see why, and we use it to explore the ocean. It just makes perfectly good sense that we'll use it to explore the forest and also even possibly look for Nessie. So it just makes sense to me.
No, I'm so totally with you. It's a great idea. Let's go here. You're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hi.
Hey, Art, you got me?
Yeah, I have you.
Roswell's. Steve calling from Yuma, Arizona, west of the Rockies.
Thank you.
And actually, Dr. Taylor, good evening.
Good evening.
My question is I'm fascinated with the robots, just absolutely fascinated.
Me too.
And you have a ton of uses for yours. What else can you do with them? I mean, to be blunt, if I had one out here in Yuma, Arizona, I don't know, I'd have them bring me a cold beer or something in this heat, or mow my yard, or, I don't know, bake me a pie or something. What else can you do with them?
Well, I always look at it this way, and I feel, a lot of times people build robots and they don't exactly have a purpose for them. They're cool things to look at, and they do things, but there's really no job for them. So my background is that I develop requirements. That's how I kind of work. And I build and design the robot to fulfill the requirements. So and usually the requirement comes from a need of some sort, necessity is the mother of invention. So if I come up into a situation, depending on the investigative situation, if the robot doesn't already have that capability, I'm going to design into a new bot all the things that it needs to do to accomplish what I want it to do. So that's kind of how it works. So basically, to answer your question, they can do anything your imagination can come up with. It's just that, do you have really a need to accomplish that task?
Well, or put more succinctly, in this case, robots for the paranormal make all kinds of sense when you think about it. They're patient. They're not going to fidget around. They're going to get the picture when it comes time to get the picture. In other words, for this purpose, these robots are ideal. Wouldn't you think, caller?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I would also like to, maybe have them take my wife out shopping or something, You got to find something for them to do around here. But, hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
You're welcome. The Oscar robot is capable of holding it will be eventually. It will be capable of holding conversation and interacting with you.
Very quickly, you're on the air with Dr. Taylor. Hello.
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 Art?
Yes, we have very little time, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to ask Dr. Taylor. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm actually a paranormal investigator, and I was wondering about the ions, what he said about the ions, because there was a time when we was doing an investigation where we actually got temperature change while I was being touched, and there was a cold spot. So I was kind of wondering, has he had anything like that happen to him? Because, it's happened on more than one occasion, but at the same time, on our millimeter, we had a 10-degree drop, and a drop on our digital thermometer while I was being touched at the same time.
Okay. Have you detected anything like that yet, Dr. Taylor?
Oh, yes. The sense of cold is not strictly ions. Definitely, I've measured temperature drops, but I generally, if they don't rise or drop more than 10 degrees, I don't pay attention to it. But yes, it definitely has happened.
Okay, see here, my friend, our program is over. We have no more time. I want to thank you so very much for being here, and of course we will have you back. The road you're going down now is really fascinating. So
I think it's pretty exciting. Thank you very much,
very
Art.
exciting.
It's been a pleasure to be with you again.
Good night, my friend.
Good night, Art. You take care.
All right, well, that's it, folks. I'm sorry. We are out of time. That's Dr. Albert Taylor. His original book is called Soul Traveler, and he's really, really serious about that. So if you're thinking that you might want to make a move up and out, that's the book for you. In the meantime, have a good night.